Mitsubo Toyishi hammered away at his keyboard and just snagged another huge win. He was totally hooked on fantasy games, where he could build his own heroes and dive into magical worlds full of epic quests and dangerous secrets. He took one look at the clock and knew he had to hit the hay since he had work first thing in the morning. He was just a 29-year-old single guy working a totally normal, boring job. He hated his life and felt totally trapped, so he escaped by diving headfirst into video games, light novels, and the internet. Tuishi was a grown man who was totally obsessed with sci-fi and other dimensions, but he knew those places only existed in his head since nobody can actually change reality. He was totally sick of his boring everyday life and just wanted to escape into a wild fantasy world where he could go on epic quests and finally become a hero. He was obsessed with becoming the chosen hero in a fantasy world, and while he usually plays on the hardest difficulty, he definitely wouldn't mind an easy mode if he actually got stuck there. But it's all just a dream, and now that the day is over, it's time to crawl under the covers. And just like that, he totally blacked out. Tuichi kept dreaming of a perfect fairy tale world where his sweet bride was right there holding his hand. Honestly, that world was just straight up incredible. But in real life, he was just a regular 30-year-old office guy who spent his whole day gaming and scrolling the web before finally crashing. That was the plan, but then everything went totally sideways. Tuisha suddenly found himself in a totally new place, surrounded by thick jungle with massive mountains looming in the back. He tried to stay cool, but realized his glasses were gone, his gut had completely vanished, and he was all alone with nobody to tell him what the heck was happening. A voice spoke from the floating screen, promising to explain everything and telling Tuisha he'd actually ended up in another world. This guy's name is Eliard. Tuisha finally got the world he was dreaming of, but it all went down way too fast. His dog was stuck at home with no one to help her, but right then, his computer revealed that magic is actually real, and they need to start figuring it out fast. The voice explained that this world is basically in the Middle Ages, where magic is everywhere but science is totally non-existent. Tuisha asks the invisible voice how to use magic, and it tells him to just open up his menu. Tuisha followed the advice and opened his inventory to find a short sword, totally shocked that his life was now a video game where he was a 19-year-old kid again instead of 29. He had a massive list of skills like magic and sword fighting to choose from, and since he had a skill menu, he could pick any power he wanted and level it up. The voice explains he can earn skill points whenever he wants, and once he levels up, he can use this menu to boost his stats and master skills in seconds that would usually take Tuisha. This was a total game changer because he could finally learn skills straight from the menu, and with a traveler's starter kit already in his bag, a voice told him he better use it wisely. He only had a few skills so far, but since he just got them and had no clue how they worked, he headed out to give them a test run. Tuisha asked what his next move was, and the voice told him he could do literally anything. Become a hero, a villain, look for a way home, or just live out his days right there, which wasn't a bad deal at all. The voice promised to keep an eye on him and said he could reach out whenever he wanted. Then the screen went black as Tuishi's wild new life in another world finally began. He finally makes it to the city of Calendile, and get this, he can actually understand every single word the locals are saying and writing. These guys didn't look like regular people at all, and since some were wearing collars, it was obvious they were slaves. He was totally lost on how freedom worked, but he also had zero clue about the social ranks, the local money, or what the coins were actually worth. He dropped 5 big copper coins just to get inside, leaving him with 1 gold, 1 large copper, 2 silver, and 28 small ones. But if he runs out of cash, he's basically 1 step away from becoming a slave. He spent forever studying the rules of this world, but he couldn't ask for help because everyone would have thought he was totally crazy. He was torn between brawling with top-tier villains to save princesses or aiming for something way better, like becoming a total harem king. But he had no clue if that was even possible in this place. He's wishing he could meet a cute girl, and right on cue, this one turns around and looks straight at him. She was seriously one of the prettiest girls you've ever seen. Over at the Travelers Guild, Tuishi walked right in and said what's up to the whole crew. The shady guy behind the counter says he's never seen him before, so Tuishi explains he's there to get fully registered at the guild and shows off his temporary ID that's only good for 3 days. The Foxman reveals his name is Oost, and Tuishi is totally relieved his body isn't as bulky as it was in the last world, flashing a sharp business smile. The guy claims he can fight with a sword without any armor, use wind magic, and even heal people. So Oost tells him those are awesome skills, but he still needs to explain the rules for signing up. First, he's got to stay out of trouble. No using weapons or magic to cause a scene in the city. Guild members have to look out for each other, and killing is totally banned. Oost announced it was finally time to see what his powers could really do. Next, the bald guild guy took the kids straight to a special training room. All the adventurers nearby were totally staring, wondering who this new guy was. The shield hero looked over at Ethan, who was busy welcoming the bald guy and the new rookie to Ishi. Ethan held up his wooden sword and said it was the perfect weapon for some practice. Tuishi reacted instantly and swung his weapon right back at him. This kid hands his short sword over to a bald old guy and tells him to keep it safe. Tuishi looked around and realized this new world was absolutely loaded with gorgeous heroines. He started warming up and finally stopped being shy around the girls, asking Usta if he could use magic. And even though the old man warned him not to kill his opponent, Tuishi was ready to test his new spells the second the trial started. Oost told Tuishi and Ethan to get ready and jump straight into the fight. Ethan lunges forward to land a hit, but Tuishi pulls off a super smooth dodge and leaves him hitting air. He slammed the handle of his weapon into him, and with the crowd going wild, they just kept on fighting. Iton was totally shocked, telling the guy he thought he just liked wearing armor. But it turns out he's actually a beast with a sword. He was kicking himself for underestimating the guy, especially since he could see every attack coming and totally should have walked away with the win. He strikes back again, knocks the sword right out of Ethan's hands, and lands a massive hit straight to his stomach. Ethan was a massive headache for Tuishi because he'd gotten way tougher, mastered the sword and brawling, and even unlocked level 2 wind magic. This guy just whipped up a massive whirlwind using his magic. Ethan gets sent flying through the air, and Oost has no choice but to declare Taichi Mitsubu the winner. The old fox realized this guy wasn't just a beast with a sword, he could actually use magic too, and man, he's seriously the real deal. Tuishi was buzzing because his magic actually worked, and the whole crowd was going wild with applause. Right then, he spots the exact same girl he just ran into on the city streets. Oost shouted to the crowd, asking who else wanted a piece of this guy, and 3 massive dudes stepped up to take the challenge. Oost hyped up a half-dead Ishi for becoming a total star and crushing the exam, but now the guy seriously needs some rest. This foxy-looking dude hands the kid his brand-new adventurer's card. Oost says everyone usually starts at rank F, but he gives him rank E instead, and Tuishi is totally lost on why he got the boost. The old man explains that rank B gets you noticed. Rank A makes everyone look up to you, and hitting rank S turns you into a total national hero. Tuishi admitted he's still got a long way to go, but Us told him he better become the absolute greatest. She headed straight to the Burning Golden Beds Hotel to get a room for every single one of them. He told them Oost from the Adventurers Guild recommended the spot and that he was looking to snag a room for himself. The guy at the counter says that since the guild sent them, 1 night with breakfast is 2 big coppers and 5 small ones, while 10 days will cost 2 silver and 5 coppers. The innkeeper calls over a maid named Hoipina and tells her to lead the guests straight to his room. She walked Tuishi right to his door and told him to have an awesome stay. The kid really liked the room and checked his stats, where Toishi saw he'd already racked up some XP from the guild test. He just scored 6 skill points and could have picked a brand new ability, but he decided to buff his current skills instead, since being effective is the only thing that matters. He checks his inventory and sees his traveler's gear is still there, and it turns out he can pull up his menu and stats just by thinking about it, which is honestly a total game changer. He packed his gear, a blanket, backpack, 3 torches, a flask, a short sword, a long rope, and some food, wondering if the system would count it all as one single item and just ignore the weight. He was super curious, so he headed to a world called Eliard to see what kind of crazy adventures were waiting for him. A message from the voice of God popped up telling him to call anytime, but Toishi decided he'd already had enough drama for one day. He flashed back to the moment he made her repeat exactly what he'd just said. He was totally blindsided when she suddenly confessed her feelings and asked him out on a date. This total stranger just straight up confessed their feelings out of nowhere. He was either heading straight for us or out grabbing some new gear. Just a few hours ago, he hit up a shop in the city market that was packed with all kinds of weapons. The whole shop smelled like cold steel and leather, and our guy had to pick just one item from the massive pile of gear. Picking out your first set of armor is a huge deal, so the young shop assistant stepped up to help him find the perfect fit. Tuishi in turn introduced himself to a saleswoman named Louise to buy some leather armor, and those pointy ears made it super obvious she was an elf. Tuishi couldn't stop thinking about the moment Louis caught him totally off guard with a sudden hug. Even with everyone watching, her touch felt amazing. She smelled great, and she was just so soft. She helped him pick out his armor and excitedly asked Tuishi what kind of gloves and knee pads he was into. He said he needed gear for brawling and sword fights on a 9 silver budget, so Luis suggested adding metal to his knee and elbow pads, though reinforcing the boots would definitely cost more than he had. He really wanted him to enjoy this new world when suddenly a massive black cat appeared out of nowhere. The way Louise talked to him made Tuishi realize that this cat was actually the manager of the whole shop. This new world is totally mind-blowing, and as the girl hands him the sword he wanted, Luis realizes he can use wind magic and wonders if he'll get a guide to show him the way. There's no way Big Brother would have used wind magic without being told, especially since he knows it's basically useless. She opened up a tiny box with a tube at the bottom and told him it was the cheapest conductor in the whole shop. It looked like a basic wooden stick, but Louis was hyped and knew he'd feel the difference, and the second he tried it, the thing started blasting out actual balls of wind. The results were honestly insane. The guy figured out he could channel magic through the tool and asked the girl if he could use it as a weapon. She ducked behind the counter and pointed out a cheap mace-shaped guide for 6 silver coins, then immediately started begging for a discount. She looked over at her boss Cat for the signal, and as soon as he gave the nod, Luis slashed the prices on her entire haul. After hitting up the Toishi weapon shop, he headed back to the guild where Oost told him he finally looked like a real adventurer. He wanted to see what his new weapon could really do, so he cranked his pull-arm skill straight up to level 2. Tui's finally getting his grind on to level up! Once he got these powers, he realized the body buff made him super fast, and his sword skills made him way tougher. Toichi finally realized he was totally ready to throw down in this crazy new world. He was just catching his breath after a brutal workout when this girl suddenly showed up. That's when she asked Tui to team up, telling him she was officially a brand new adventurer. She's way too scared to fight those monsters solo and tried to join the group, but she just couldn't get in. She was low-key bummed it wasn't a love confession, but she still wanted to team up as adventurers because after seeing his insane sword skills and magic during the test, she knew there was no way he was actually a beginner like her. And that's exactly why she wants to stay right by his side. That's when it finally clicked, and she realized exactly why she was so freaked out. He was stoked she trusted him since she's so sweet, but it's a total bummer she wasn't actually confessing her love. This was a whole new world where anyone could mess him up if he wasn't careful. But for some reason, he just felt like he could trust this girl. It felt way too good to be real, and even though she was clearly holding back, he still wanted the truth from the guy she chose over everyone else who was way stronger than him. She thinks Toshi used to be a knight, or maybe even a hired mercenary. He was a total rookie with insane power, and while she was looking for a powerhouse to follow, Toshi could tell right away that this girl was definitely hiding something. Ust promised Toshi that the girl was 100% legit and even put his own neck on the line to back her up. Tui told himself to quit being so paranoid about the new girl, even though she was way too smart and had some seriously suspicious skills. He had to watch his back since he'd never set foot in this place before. He wasn't stressing about the group stuff yet, so he just reached out his hand and told them his name. She flashed a big smile, shook his hand, and told him her name was Marl. Marl was stoked to go on an adventure with Tsuyoshi, and since she was so hyped up, he told her to jump straight into the guild's mission. Marl was shocked he wanted to start the mission right away, but the guy just said that as adventurers, they're always looking for their next big thrill. He could tell she was totally taking her sweet time getting to work. He told Marl to relax and promised that if things got sketchy, they'd just bolt and he'd make sure she stayed safe. She absolutely loved hearing that, and her eyes lit up with pure joy. He only told her that because he was dying for an adventure, and now that they've officially taken the guild quest, there's no way he's ever telling her the truth. They headed outside, and Marl's jaw dropped when Tsuyoshi pulled a weapon right out of thin air, proving he actually knew how to use that storage trick. Tsuyoshi called it a repository, and in a world like this, a power that rare is almost impossible to find. Marl was struggling with all her gear and felt super jealous that Tavisha didn't have to carry a thing, but he warned her that his power was a total secret before asking what kind. Once he realized it was a sword, he challenged her to a quick duel to see how strong she actually was. Marl let out a massive scream and lunged straight at her enemy. She had a major bad feeling about this because her waist was supposed to be straightened out. She collapsed onto the ground, totally wide open and hating that she couldn't dodge the incoming strike. He told her to just give up on the group, but Marl wasn't having it and went sprinting right after him. She grabbed onto his leg for dear life, and he finally realized why no other team wanted her. This girl was a total zero who couldn't fight at all. He straight up told Marl to ditch the adventurer dream and just head back home to live a normal life. She sounded super bitter when she told him she had absolutely no home to go back to. Her eyes went wide with fear as she pointed at the bushes, warning Tsuyoshi that someone was heading right for them. It was just a massive, lame-looking beast with some giant tusks. Marl hit the dirt in total shock, unable to believe how fast that boar just popped up out of nowhere. He really needed this to work, so he asked the girl to walk right up and face the monster head-on. Marl was totally crushed, and her whole body was shaking like crazy. Tsuyoshi was totally down to fight in this new world, but he didn't feel like he had to save anyone's skin. Marla's loud scream snapped the guy out of his head, warning him that a massive storm was heading right for them. This monster was way faster than Tsuyoshi expected, and with no clue why it was even hunting him, he just couldn't shake it off. "Grab your stick and get ready to take on the board!" With his powers totally under control, he lets loose a magic spell that slices right through the wind. Bora's body got launched into the air and slammed back down, not moving a single muscle. Marl turned to Mr. Tsuyoshi and told him she was just so happy he actually made it out alive. She just straight up told the girl that traveling is super dangerous and she's definitely not strong enough to protect herself. He's giving it his all, but he might not be strong enough to look out for everyone else. Marl knew that F and E rankers usually stand no chance against a boar, but she decided to take the risk and go anyway. Tuishi promised he'd protect her, but the guy told her every adventurer has to look out for their own life, and she finally admitted she'd been acting way too reckless. She couldn't even dream of being an adventurer since she had zero skills, and because she couldn't fight, she was just a huge burden to Mr. Tuesha, the only guy who actually protected her and the hero she desperately wanted to become. He put his hand on her head and told her he was just super glad she was okay. Marl was still super freaked out by that boar, so she asked the guy for permission to go down to the river and do her laundry. She was so hyped and terrified that she actually wet herself, and now she's convinced her marriage life is officially over. Marl stared right at the shocked Ishii and straight up asked her to marry him. Tuishi and Marl headed deep into the woods and ran right into two goblins, but Marl had already warned the guy they were coming. Suddenly, there are 5 of these monsters, and another boar is already sneaking up to attack them from behind. Tuishi realized Marl is totally useless in a fight, but since he's so good at watching their backs, it makes the battle way easier for him. She was the first one to sense that boar, and just like Uzit said, her nose is seriously on another level. Looks like that life lesson wasn't a total waste of time after all. It took a bit, but Tuishi finally wiped out the whole mob, taking down 3 little boars and 29 goblins. Toshi was absolutely terrified because real combat is nothing like a video game, and the old man back at the guild was just glad they didn't die out there. Marl was totally blown away by Mr. Tuishi's skills as he pulled the monsters out one by one, shoved them into his treasure chest, and headed home while explaining that this awesome trick is called inventory. Oost dropped the reward on the counter, and when Tuishi asked how the pay was calculated, the host explained it's all about the size and condition of the monsters, meaning those small boars and goblins were worth 5 big copper coins each. The old man asked how they'd split the cash based on who did the most work, but Marl admitted she didn't lift a finger during the whole fight. Tui called Marl his secret weapon, and she actually spotted the monsters before he could even shout a warning. She was calling out enemy locations and numbers right in the middle of the fight, so she totally earned her pay. But Oost argued that Tuishi's bigger cut proves he did the heavy lifting. These two are definitely going to be legendary adventurers since one's a magic swordsman with a treasure chest, and the other is a gorgeous girl who's a pro at spotting enemies. Yusti was 100% sure they were the perfect match. Marl thanked Tuishi for the day, and he was just as glad to have her around. She told him she definitely wants to hit up the guild and tackle the next quest together. As Tui headed back to the hotel, he realized this other world was actually pretty awesome. The second he crashed on his hotel bed, his head started throbbing and his mouth felt bone dry, just like he had a massive hangover. He was totally desperate to get even a single drop of water. He looks over and finds a girl just lying right there in his bed. Living life on his own terms in this new world is way tougher than he ever imagined. As they said goodbye, Marl felt bad for not being more helpful, so she promised Tuishi they'd definitely crush a guild quest together next time. Once the guy leaves, she tells Ust she's heading to a cheaper hotel, but the old man warns her to stay safe since it's already super dark out. She was totally shocked to find Tuishi at the tavern, but he just looked up from his dinner and told her to pull up a chair. Marl told Tuishi she was stoked they were at the same hotel, but it wasn't luck. She was on a mission to get as close to him as possible, no matter what. She fills his glass, knowing Mr. Tuyish's plan is finally kicking off, while the young adventurer is just hyped to have a full wallet and wants to celebrate with her. They clinked their glasses and cheered to each other's health before knocking back their drinks. Marl tries to break the ice by asking why he became an adventurer, and Tuisha explains that after training with a master back home, he's ready to test his skills since he can't actually go back anymore. She wasn't dumb and knew he was dodging her, so she asked where he was from, and Tui straight up told her he was from Earth. Marl had never even heard of this spot and knew it had to be way out in the middle of nowhere. She's 100% sure Mr. Toishi has black hair, sharp eyes, and a seriously handsome face. Plus, he's tall and fit without looking way too buff. He was basically a hero straight out of the stories she grew up hearing at home. Marl realized she couldn't go home, so when the guy asked who she had to help her, she told him the only person she could trust was sitting right in front of her. She made up her mind to tell him she wanted to be his wife, no matter how crazy things got today. Just as the drinks ran out, Marl ordered a fresh round for Toisha. Marl just straight up ordered a bottle of nectar. She said she had nowhere left to go and told Tweesy to try this drink so she could forget about going back, even if it was just for today. Toisha drank so much that he could barely even move his tongue anymore. He told Marl he didn't believe a girl her age would just stay at a hotel with a guy she just met. And Marl realized right then that Twishy seriously can't keep his mouth shut. He muttered that she was way too cute to lose, admitting he only stuck around to drink because he was actually super worried about her. Marl told Tuishi that she really loved seeing his gentle side while he was protecting her. And honestly, every time they ran into each other in the city, it felt like a total gift from destiny. Despite everything, she totally fell for him, leaving Tuishi questioning why she ever decided to be an adventurer. Out of nowhere, she drops a huge bombshell and reveals she's actually a princess. 2 years ago, her family tried to force her to marry a total creep of a prince, but she wasn't having it. So she ditched the palace and ran away to start her life as a... The guy thought her story was super boring, but since she's a princess, hanging out is basically impossible. So Marl suggests that Toichi should just marry her. You awkwardly asked if she had any family left, wondering why she didn't just stay in her hometown instead of chasing adventures. Marl strikes a pose and straight up asks Toshi if she's actually ugly. Tuisha's head was spinning as he told them he never even said that. This guy got totally wasted and face-planted right under the table. Mara leaned in close and told him straight up that he was the only one she was actually worried about. He even told her she was way too sweet for him to ever get totally drunk. She told Toishi to just lie down and rest for a bit while she handled the rest of the mess. Marl was feeling super proud of herself because she had the whole thing figured out from the start. He grabbed her hand, and they both laid back on the comfy bed together. Tosh woke up with a killer headache, and the sun was already blasting through his window. He was totally shocked to find Marl sleeping right next to him, so he reached out to touch her chest to see if she was real, and she suddenly blinked her eyes open. Marl flashed a super mysterious grin and told Toishi good morning. The guy was totally losing it and started screaming, but Marl just stayed chill and asked why he was being so mean after spending the night with a girl as pretty as her. So Tavishi, Marl told him that since he forgot everything, she'd fill him in on the whole story about how she lived with Tuishi-san until he got totally wasted one night, saw how pretty she was, and made her life a living hell. Now she's all Toishisan's, and he can have all the fun he wants with her. He really didn't want to hear this, so he forced himself to chill out, knowing that if he didn't step up, Marla's innocent reputation would be totally trashed. Marl turned bright red and admitted that Mr. Toishi was actually a total powerhouse. She admits she's terrified, so he pulls her into a gentle back hug, but she covers his face and tells him she doesn't want to hear the details. He felt so guilty that he couldn't even look her in the eye when she asked if he was mad. No point stressing over what happened. She's totally fine. He was totally kicking himself for being so wasteful, especially since he couldn't even remember his first night with such a gorgeous girl. Marl pulls the guy into a sweet hug and asks if they can do it all over again. Suddenly, Hoipina knocks on the door to clean the room, so he jumps out of bed and tells her to go for it while he heads out for a bit. He and Marl hopped out of bed and threw their clothes on. Marl showed up with zero clothes on and didn't feel awkward about it at all. He thought she looked super hot while getting dressed, and she just laughed, knowing he was totally into what he saw. Toichi told the girl to chill out and promised he'd keep her safe no matter what kind of trouble came their way. After that, the whole crew headed out to grab some breakfast together. Marl and Taoishi was just walking through the city when the girl suddenly said it felt like they were on a total date. Toichi knew that hanging out with a girl as pretty as Marl was impossible in his old life, and even though he's still a bit chubby, he feels like he's living in a total dream. They head over to the weapon shop and meet a new girl named Tuishi Aure. Toichi asked to look through the shop again because his old monster fighting stick just wasn't cutting it anymore, so he was back to pick out a better weapon. He asked Marl if she'd been to this shop before, and she said yeah, a few times, then told the seller he needed a weapon to defend himself in the next fight. Ket Lewis went over to serve Marla himself and checked out Toshi's queue, telling him straight up that his weapon was in terrible shape. His weapon is a beast in battle, and it's perfect for the mages in the back who stay far away from the front lines. Tui told the talking cat he needed some serious weapons. Lewis asked how much money they had, and Marl said she was looking for a light crossbow she could actually use. Tuishi grabbed all his gear and tried to haggle, but the seller just tossed in 24 crossbow bolts for free, and even though it was a pretty cheap move, he had to take the deal. Marl grabbed a crossbow, while Tuishi Lewis hooked him up with a combat staff that was basically a twin of his old one, which was super helpful. Marl grabbed the crossbow and felt like a total adventurer, giving her a massive boost of confidence. She was ready for any adventure because she knew Toyoshi-san had her back. After that, Toichi spent ages just grinding and training his heart out. He faced off against a bunch of people, eventually clashing swords with Ethan. Marl is seriously grinding it out and getting stronger with the rest of the squad. Marley wasn't quite stronger than Toishi yet, but he was definitely powering up fast. Ishish was constantly leveling up and buying skill points to buff his magic and day 1 skills, but he had to save his mana and barely use any spells if he wanted to dream. He dropped 3 skill points into fire, water, and earth to boost them all to level 2, finally letting him unlock a bunch of awesome new powers. He just landed in a mysterious world called Iliard for the first time, and as a strange voice starts talking, he's left wondering why he's suddenly 19 years old. He was already stacked with skills, and he realized his fighting, archery, and cooking weren't just level 1 freebies. They actually came from his past life where he practiced archery as a kid, learned to negotiate in the hotel business, and mastered cooking by making all his own food. In martial arts, you start as an expert, then a title holder, then a teacher, then an elite, and once you hit level 5, you finally reach the insane Superman class. So that was the situation, but Tuishi didn't really trust that weird voice, so he spotted Amara and called out to her. He asked her to be his magic training partner, but Ethan told him he better start treating her way more gently. With a sneaky grin, the mage told Marl he had a new spell to test, thinking that if he just said he unlocked it with skill points, she'd totally be down to team up with him again. Marla says yes, and Tuishi immediately tells her to shoot him with a crossbow. He calmed the freaked-out girl, and she finally took the shot. Tuishi didn't waste a second and threw up a massive earth wall spell. The arrow slams into the wall and doesn't even scratch him, proving this shield spell is the real deal, so he tells Marl to fire another shot. Another bolt slams into a wall of water, and this new magic just freezes it solid. It was totally insane, because if that water wall hit, it would smash right through enemies and freeze them from the inside out, making it a seriously deadly power. Ethan was just glad his injury wasn't from fire, but Tuishi could actually blast flames, and Uzi warned him that if the whole guild burned down, they'd be in massive trouble. He fired a magic arrow out his hotel window and realized it was pure level 1 magic that didn't even need elements, making it way more dangerous than normal spells and super easy to boost to level 2. Next, he leveled up his restoration magic to rank 2, so now he can neutralize deadly poisons and even cancel out alcohol on the spot. Toisha's main talent was reading people, but he was totally losing it trying to figure out who Marl actually was. She caught him staring and asked why he was being so dead serious. Tui asks why she's an adventurer again, so Marl explains she's actually a princess who ran away to avoid marrying a total creep from a neighboring kingdom. She's refusing to go back home, and she's just waiting 3 years for her little sister to marry him so she can finally return. He used his new eye powers and realized Marla was actually Mario Vlank Miscronia, the first princess of the Miscronia kingdom. He was totally frozen and had no clue what his next move should be. He remembered how, back when he was just a regular adventurer, he actually spent a few nights with a literal princess. He was positive Marl was still keeping secrets from him, and even though she was freaked out by the knights and mercenaries, there was no doubt she had definitely ditched the land of the nobles. Marl says Toshisan is going to keep adventuring to get super strong, become a lord, and take over harem, and since the guy didn't even argue, he thought having a harem was totally fine since top-tier adventurers usually have multiple wives, and their kids always end up with super-powered genes and the best traits from both parents. He still didn't get the basics, so Marley explained that adventurers who constantly face death die pretty easily because their bodies just can't handle that much pressure. She straight up admitted she's super jealous and can't stand the thought of anyone taking her first partner, Tuyishi-san. She's keeping this a total secret from everyone except for Tasha. He thought Marl was a total cutie, so he pulled her in for a hug and a kiss. Marl was so hyped he was literally about to cry. She crashed straight onto the bed. She asked Toshi if he was going to keep her awake all night again, and as he leaned in, he told her that was totally up to her. Once she fell asleep, Taoishi realized that if someone was really chasing them, they should have just made a run for it together. He was dead set on making sure this girl was finally happy. Tuishi just mastered a sick new shooting skill, so he grabbed Marla's light crossbow to get his hype back up. Training like this is the best way to master new skills while saving points. But suddenly Marl runs up to announce their new mission, taking down a pack of goblins. The guild was absolutely packed because it looked like a ton of new jobs just dropped. Tuishi was already a total legend among the adventurers, and they all called him a wizard. He figured his magic training was what made him stand out, especially since he hadn't seen a single other mage at the guild's training grounds. It looked like they'd just steamroll the goblins alongside the Order of Knights, and Toishi was pretty sure this whole fight was going to be a breeze. USD just ordered a total goblin wipeout, sending everyone to a village half a day into the woods with a reward of 5 big copper coins for every monster they take down. The guild is handing out 2 silver coins to everyone for the cleanup, but they made it clear that if you slack off, you aren't getting paid. They were supposed to meet up today right after the night call, but they might be stuck in the woods all night, and since this mission could take 2 whole days, I hope everyone remembered to pack some food. Then I remembered the guild counter sells some awesome canned food for a total steal. Tuishi and Marl weren't taking any chances, so they made sure they were 100% ready for the mission. They grabbed 3 days of canned food, some extra blankets, and a flashlight to make sure they were totally ready for the mission. They hauled a barrel of water into the storeroom, but after thinking for a second, Tushia decided to grab 2 more. Oost was totally blown away by how much Toisha's magic box could actually hold. The guy explains that he's never carried enough stuff to actually fill it, so he has no clue what its limit even is. It's finally time to head out, and the meeting spot is totally packed with adventurers and members of the Night Order. He was totally sure they'd win since their training made them way stronger. They could use all sorts of weapons now, and Marl finally learned how to shoot. Mitsubo Toi was totally hyped to see what kind of wild adventures were coming his way next. Toishi's magic lets him whip out a sword made of fire, And since he wants to learn how to take on a real sorceress, he's gotta see what she can actually do. The squad pushed forward with a pro-level 10 scout leading the charge and the main group of knights right behind them. The new guys in the squad made it pretty far without any real trouble, only having to deal with a few weak monsters along the way. Knights were shielding the front of the army while others held it down in the back. The soldiers moved in to shield the wizards, but it's totally weird that they only tried to split up and attack a few goblin groups earlier. Out of nowhere, a massive army of goblins was spotted, and everyone was told to gear up for a fight immediately. You could hear the monsters closing in, and it looked like the front line was totally falling apart. He asked her to come back tomorrow and told her she didn't even need to hurry. A pack of goblins suddenly popped up and charged straight at the crew. Toishi jumped into the brawl like everyone else, taking out those monsters with his bare hands one by one. Toishi was totally shocked when the goblins just sprinted right past them instead of fighting, and Marl realized they were actually running away from something way scarier. Marl's danger sense kicked in, and he definitely caught on to something suspicious. This thing was way stronger than those goblins, and the adventurers in front just heard a totally wild scream. They saw the dead adventurer and realized the guy hunting the goblins was strong enough to take someone out in a single hit. This monster was way scarier than those goblins, but Tavishi told the girl to stay calm and promised her everything would be okay. The shouting was getting closer and closer, so Toishi told Marl he had to trust his own brain. She said this monster actually hunts goblins and is just as mysterious as a troll. A crazy roar and a heavy stomp let them know a seriously dangerous guy had just stepped onto the scene. Everyone thought this was just a basic goblin hunt, but nobody expected things to get this crazy. The leader shouted a warning to the adventurer getting close to the injured guy, telling him it was way too dangerous. The adventurers and knights jumped the troll from the sides and back, thinking it was too slow to react, but their big move failed, and the monster barely even felt it. Even the guys who started the fight were getting seriously messed up. The leader yelled at the group to stay sharp since their knights were gone, and he ordered everyone to fall back immediately. Tuisha wasn't down with the plan because Marl already told him all about the troll's weak spots. The guy heals from small hits in a flash, so the young man decides to break out the fire magic. Toishi blasted the troll with a fire arrow, and the flames were so intense that its healing factor couldn't keep up, leaving the leader totally shocked that Toishi could use fire magic to shut down. The troll let out a massive roar as the knight's metal armor rattled and clanked together. He triggered the energy charge, and it set off a massive, ear-splitting explosion. The beat-up monster got hit with a massive counter. The leader used the shields to get right in the troll's face, sword ready to go. The troll is finally down after they used their shields like a staircase to take that massive monster out. The knight captain showed off his skills and totally wrecked that troll with one clean move. He thanked Tuisha for the backup and told her they only made it out with a few scratches because of her. But wait, it gets even crazier. 3 more monsters suddenly pop up right in front of the shocked fighters. He focused all his magic and blasted those monsters with a massive explosion of energy. The knight captain stepped up through the screams of the trolls and told his injured guys to fall back. Suddenly, the mage Tuishi stepped forward, and the guy realized that even though this monster was huge, its weak spots were just like a human's, so he knew he had to aim right for the head. He took a swing at one of them and landed a direct hit. Just as one monster fell, 2 more jumped into the fight, forcing the crew to turn tail and run. The troll's massive swing missed by just a tiny hair. Tuishi dodged the hit like a pro and smashed his weapon right into the monster's head. Another massive monster stepped right in his way, and it felt like these things were just never going to stop coming. Toishizu's baton got jammed deep inside the last monster's head, and he just couldn't yank it free. Going up against a monster like that with just your bare hands is a total death wish. Things were getting seriously intense. Tuishi was down to just a dagger and some weak magic, but he still had enough left in him to escape the battlefield. Suddenly, he notices a crossbow bolt is actually jammed right into the monster's paw. Marl blasted him from right up close, trying to give Tuishi a chance to get out of there. He had to get past this monster to see tomorrow, so he poured every last bit of magic into his dagger for one final massive strike. He poured every last bit of strength he had left into this one final hit. A horrible screeching sound rang out, and Tuishi knew instantly that his dagger was toast. He was totally out of weapons, so he just packed his fist with magic power instead. Tuishi takes a massive swing and slams right into the guy. The monster was finally down, and while Tuishi was super bummed about his shattered dagger, at least the staff was still in one piece. Marl threw herself into Toya's arms and just started bawling her eyes out. He was totally covered in blood, so she knew he was in serious trouble. He calmed her down, patched her up, and then totally chewed her out for not running away when he told her to. He patted her head and told her he finally kept his word, since he promised he'd protect her no matter what. Marl burst into happy tears while Tuishi finally let out a massive sigh of relief. Ethan pops up out of nowhere and asks if he can give her a head pat too. Looks like the chaos is finally over since the knights wiped out the trolls and the goblins backed off. But the cost was brutal. 3 adventurers are dead, and out of the 7 injured, 5 are in really bad shape. 6 guys were pretty beat up while the others got off easy, but those numbers don't even come close to showing how bad it actually was. Ethan shook her hand and told her that everyone on a quest needs to have each other's backs. He's so weak he can't even lift a spear, and apparently, not even restoration magic can fix him. Sitting by the fire, Tuishi apologized for not being able to fully heal the wound, while Ethan really wished Miss Witch could have been there to fix him up. Marl brought over some water and thanked Tavisha for the help, but after spamming healing magic over and over, they didn't have a single second to rest. He was super relieved those 3 barrels of guild water worked like a charm, healing even the most beat-up guys so fast they were already ready to head back home. Tuishi was doing everything he could to keep Marla safe while fighting that final troll. Instead of grabbing a sword, he tapped into the crazy magic hiding inside him. He unleashed He got jumped by 6 trolls and soloed half of them, so he's about to walk away with a huge pile of loot. Tuichi was just chilling on a log next to Marlo, looking super happy. The big boss of the Crossroads Knights, Valtz, and the mage commander Lynette walk up to the mage to thank him for being a total legend in the fight. Volt bragged that he was the only reason they crushed the trolls with barely any scratches, so he totally deserves to be an A rank. The guy explained he's still an E rank because he literally just started 10 days ago, and this is only his 2nd quest ever. Lynette gave him a massive side-eye, thinking he was totally trolling her since the captain just explained how much brutal training it takes to be an adventurer. But Toishi just dropped a bombshell. He learned magic and fighting from village masters. He's actually from another world, and some creepy voice has been guiding him the whole time. Waltz reached out to Tuishi, telling him he really saved the knight's skins and to leave his info if he wanted a reward for his hard work. The guy says he'll be waiting near the central square in South Flamehaven, and now that every last goblin is wiped out, the job is officially finished. A few knights headed out at sunrise just to be safe, but they found the entire goblin village totally wiped out. Turns out the trolls attacked, forcing the goblins to just book it, and even though some got taken out, they still called it a win. And just like that, everything was finally back to normal. Lynette walked up and told the guy the knights had spotted him, but Tuishi was totally clueless about what that meant. The girl warned him to stay away from those sketchy people, and Tuishi told her he'd already decided to cut them off. He lost everything when he got dropped into this world, and now he won't trust the knights at all, which has Marl wondering if there's a connection. He was totally clueless about what was actually going down in this kingdom. But it wasn't just Calendile. across the entire world of Eliarda, there lived a ruler who controlled the most powerful force anyone had ever seen. This mysterious voice was actually God himself. Tuishi had zero clue how to actually keep his freedom in this crazy new world. After barely surviving those terrifying monsters, the crew headed back to the guild and got a massive hero's welcome. Tuishi and Maro stared at the city guy with total curiosity, and he just flashed them a super friendly smile. The whole town was super hyped and thanked them for finally making that intersection safe again. Knights are supposed to keep the crossroads safe even if travelers die, but there's one thing that's really bugging Vaults. Should I actually tell the guild about Marl? She was totally wiped out from her first multi-day raid, so Ethan told the young winners to go get some rest and grab a drink at the tavern. Ethan claimed he already took down a goblin or two. Oost greeted the crew the second they got back, telling them he was super stressed about their trip to the goblin village, but he was just glad everyone made it home safe. I mean, 3 of their own teammates were just wiped out. A bunch of trolls totally jumped them out of nowhere. Everyone would have been toast if the knights hadn't stepped in to save them. After the fight, the old guy asked to check. Tuisha asked the master what would happen to the fallen adventurers the knights took, and he told her they'd be buried in the city cemetery while all their gear gets sent back to their families. Toysian Ost checked the morality maps and was totally shocked that the wizard had already wiped out 3 trolls. Ethan backed it up, saying he literally saw the guy use fire magic to roast that troll to a crisp. Another traveler backed him up, saying he'd stabbed the second troll with his staff, while Marl added that Mr. Tuishi literally ripped the last one apart with his bare hands. She felt super awkward getting all that praise, but everyone was already calling him a total wizard. He shocks everyone by pulling crispy troll corpses out of his magic chest, and the old man is hyped to turn the skin into armor, give the fat to alchemists, and sell the meat for a solid price, even if their heads are totally wrecked. These trolls are worth a ton of money, so the guild is always pushing adventurers to bring any magical monsters they find straight to them. Everyone gets 2 silver just for showing up, and while Oost didn't have the final math yet, he was looking at 30 gold for the troll plus another 5 for taking it down. There were roughly 105 gold coins in the pile, give or take. Marl was totally floored by the massive payout for just one job, and Tuishi couldn't even wrap his head around it since it was way more than any normal adventurer's pay. The crew went totally wild celebrating their big win, cheering at the top of their lungs and slamming back drinks to toast their success. Once Tuishi got his reward for the conquest, 20 other adventurers signed up too, and he headed to an all-you-can-eat bar for 5 gold coins because he was totally done counting. The girls were totally hooked on Mr. Tuishi and started begging him to tell them all about his wild adventures. He saw some guys looking super jealous, so he announced that all the food at Seiken is totally free today. Marl flashed a smirk and told the girls messing with Isha to keep their hands off her. It was super late by the time Marl and Tuishi finally made it back home. Marl was already out cold way before Tuishi even headed to bed. He's totally used to this life now, but before he landed in Eliarda and met Marl, he was just a regular 29-year-old guy stuck in a boring routine. Now, every day is a wild adventure because of her, and she actually loves him too. He leaned in close and gave her a quick thank you. Marl opens her eyes and tells him that sweet talk doesn't matter if he's checking out other girls, so Tuishi asks if she's actually worried about that. It looked exactly like that, and he was totally freaking out about her. Marl jumped out during the quest and tried to keep his cool, because if Tuishi loses, his whole life in this world is basically over. Marl was happy Tuishi actually cared about her, but he told her to stay out of it and stop interrupting. He flopped onto her bed and teased her that this cheeky guy was finally going to attack. Marl was still lounging in bed way past breakfast, and when Tuishi told her she had to get up, She whined that staying awake until sunrise was basically straight-up torture. She's totally able to have a baby, but since she's an adventurer, her guild used magic to make sure she doesn't get pregnant. The guild hooks up female adventurers with protection magic, because if they end up pregnant, their questing days are officially over. Tui knew something was super sketchy, because even if that one girl got pregnant and the group fell apart, it still didn't explain why all these other adventurers were just vanishing. Starting a new band is a total nightmare with all this drama, but that's how Marl ended up joining him after everything she's been through. Marl says some of them are actually demons in disguise, which is why most adventurers learn magic to prevent having kids. Taoisha checked her out, and she turned bright red, asking him why he was staring at her like that. Adventurers getting hitched is actually super common and happens way more than you'd think. He was seriously thinking about marrying Marl, but wanted to get to know her better first. And today was the big day to see how much cash he'd score for those trolls. He met up with Marl and told her to get ready quick. Then she grabbed his hand and they headed straight to the guild. But way more importantly, they headed straight for the gun shop. Tavishi explained that his dagger snapped during yesterday's fight, and honestly, a traveler without a weapon is basically useless. Cat Lewison greets the group and asks Toishi what he's looking for. So Toishi explains he needs a sword that won't break under his magic and that he's got 10 gold coins to spend. The kid spotted a short sword sitting right there on the counter. He looked totally sharp, so she told Marla to go check out that new crossbow she knew she'd love. He had to pick one of those two swords because every other weapon was way too expensive. This mithril sword was rocking a massive guard. This sword was rock solid and perfectly straight, and everyone said it was totally unbreakable and packed with insane magic power. Even if he poured all his magic into it, this sword wouldn't snap, and he was totally obsessed with his new weapon. He turned to Lewis and asked for a discount since he was buying such a sick sword, while the cat asked about that mithril dagger he liked earlier. Lewis knew Toishi was gonna wreck him because that dagger has a wind magic pearl inside that makes it super light and crazy fast. Lewis decides to cut them a break, offering both items for 24 coins instead of 25 to help them out. He slammed 24 coins onto the table, leaving the cat totally stunned by his wealth, and explained he just sold 3 troll bodies that would be hitting the market any day now. Once they were outside, Marl asked which sword he picked, and while he was just hyped to test it out, she was secretly smiling because she thought he'd bought a dagger for her. This girl was skipping down the sidewalk having the time of her life, so Tuishi asked her where she was even headed. Marl reminded him that he still owed her that date he promised. Inside the Concerned Knights Guild, Captain Valtz drops the news that the Crossroads Knights' big mission is all about taking down goblins. They also took out the trolls, and the guy he was talking about is Misubo Toishi. Back in the city, Marl and Twishy were just vibing and wandering the streets while he treated her to some awesome ice cream. Marl decided he wanted to switch things up and get a little fancy with his outfit. He started clearing out his closet to make room for their shopping trip, mostly because he was hyped to see Marlin in some super cute outfits. They hit up every single shop while she picked out all the outfits she loved. Marl was totally buzzing after her massive shopping spree, and even though she was exhausted, he definitely went a little overboard. It blew his mind that most shops only sold used gear because tailoring is way too pricey, so everyone just buys and sells to each other in a never-ending loop. They bought so many new outfits that they just had to flex them all tonight. Moro was seriously dying to rock a dancer's costume. I want her to grab that dagger he bought and hand it over to Marl as another surprise gift. This gift totally hit Marl right in the feels. The guy asked to take the gift without any drama and was super thankful when he finally got it. Out of nowhere, everyone nearby started giving them a big welcome. Everything felt super weird to him, but he figured it might just be some local tradition he didn't know about yet. Back at the hotel, Koi Pina meets them, and finds out all about the gift Toysha is planning to give tomorrow. She hits Marla with a super mysterious question, asking if she's actually happy like it's some kind of legendary riddle. Pina remembered how she just totally melted the second that guy offered her some mithril. She revealed that the guy who owned that flaming anvil was actually her husband. Marl had no idea that the owner's daughter was actually Hopina. Tui apologized for cutting the girl off. But what's the real secret behind this legendary gift? The girls traded these super weird looks, looking totally confused and suspicious at the same time. Pina got all aggressive and asked why he gave Marl that dagger, but when he said he just thought she'd like it, Marl totally lost it and started crying. He gave the girl a hug, told her he was totally lost, and then turned to Pina to ask what the heck was going on. She explains that when a regular guy gives a girl a mithril dagger, it means she's officially his and has to use it to protect her honor. That gesture was actually a marriage proposal, but Twishy was totally clueless. He tried to take Marla out for dinner, but Pina shut it down because she didn't trust him alone with the girl he just made cry. The guy felt so bad and apologized for making her cry because he honestly had no idea that gift would mean so much to her. He said sorry for the wrong advice, then paused and admitted he was way out of line. He decided to switch up how he'd give the gift, cooling his head so he could finally make his move. He dropped to one knee right in front of Marlo and held out the dagger. She hugged the gift tight to her chest and just started crying all over again. Pina said her goodbyes and told Tui it was time for her to head out, asking him to finally stop crying a river. She pulled Tuyishi into a tight hug and kissed him, telling him she was just so happy. Both of them realized at the same time that this night was gonna be a long one. Marlon Toishi finally opened his eyes way past his alarm. He leaned in for a soft kiss, and she immediately asked if she'd woken him up. After having a total blast all night, it's finally time for the crew to head out and grab some food. Hoipina saw how happy the kids looked, realized what was happening, and dropped an envelope for Tuishi right on the table. Marl was totally stoked to get an invite to the Crossroad Knights base in Calendile, because getting a shout-out from those guys is a massive deal. He didn't really care how Marla reacted, and if the Knights were the ones behind this, he was just gonna blow off the invite, so he told her to stay at the guild. Crossroads is a major city in the kingdom of Calendile. Every 5 years, they pick a brand new patroness to lead the place. To even get the job, you have to be. Marl gave him the full rundown on the ranking system, starting from the top-tier dukes all the way down to the marquis, count, viscount, baron, and finally the quasi-barons. The night guards were posted at the Western District intersection. So why was Tavishi even called out to this place? As he waits for the next move, he checks his stats and sees he's racked up some training points, with his sword and polearm skills hitting level 4, and both his combat spirit and... Suddenly, a guy walks up, says sorry for the wait, and asks for a fight. He felt like a total idiot for giving that guy even one opening, and the second the teacher called him the winner, he demanded to know what the point of this whole training session was anyway. Everyone at the training realized he was a total beast with both magic and a sword, and honestly, guys like him are super rare. Twining, the big boss of the Knights of the Crossroads, actually asked Tuishi to join them as a kendo instructor. The kid said he was honored, but preferred his wildlife as a free adventurer. So Twining pointed at Instructor Vows and told him to check the guy out since he's used to dealing. They're hyped to thank him for crushing those trolls, but since the law blocks them from giving him cash, they hook him up with a sick dagger instead. Trying to stay cool, she grabbed the weapon and fired up the evaluator's eye. Tucked right inside the dagger was a simple stone that looked absolutely stunning. The sword was super well made and covered in mysterious carvings that Tavishi just couldn't figure out. Twining said he loved the dagger, but after he brought up Tuishi's insane magic, the young man realized this guy was definitely hiding his real reason for being there. Marx, the big-time leader of the Knights of the Crossroads, the Magic Course, and an honorary baron, stepped up to welcome Tuishe for the Royal Guard. The guy suddenly remembered there was a magic cavalry station right by the Night Square. Marx just lunges forward and grabs the guy by his clothes. He figured they should just go and spill the whole story to Mr. Twining. The Baron points to a massive glowing orb and explains it's a testing device that scans your magic to show off all your stats and skills. He wasn't sure if showing his powers was a bad move, but since Mark told him to touch the crystal ball and he had no reason to refuse, he just reached out and went for it. Everyone's eyes were glued to the magic orb as Hishi's stats finally popped up, and while it looked basic at first, the truth was actually mind-blowing. Marx is totally shocked and asks where he's from, so Tuishi tells him he's from Deko, but asks why he wants to know since things are starting to get super tense. Everyone was losing their minds because even though he was only level 12, his mana was totally insane, and his sword skills were already at level 4, making Volt gulp as he realized Tuishi was probably this cracked before he even got here. There was no doubt about it. This guy was a total hero. Twining assumed Tuishi was some rich kid, but Tuishi told him he was dead wrong, and the Crossroads leader basically said he didn't care where he came from anyway. Mark explains that while good people usually gain 1 to 3 points per level, this guy's magic is so massive that his stats are totally off the charts. Tuishi is a total hero, and after the guy finally gave in and agreed, he found out that being a hero comes with a massive list of responsibilities. First off, he's got to let the guards and the guild know where he is so the government can hit him up with missions he's forced to finish. Twining mentioned a second, way more annoying job, but the perk was total freedom to travel anywhere, so the guy asked what he'd actually have to do. Mark says the kingdom picks up the bill for official missions, but if he's just out adventuring, he's got to pay for everything himself. He thought there'd be way more rules, but it turns out this hero is backing both Calendile and his current country, and he's so insanely powerful that Twining stared the guy down and told him the kingdom needed a hero's power, but it wouldn't be free since he'd have to take out a bunch of dangerous monsters. He stared at the leader in total shock, asking if heroes in other countries were really just acting as a force to fight monsters. Seeing Twining's totally confused face, the guy told him not to take it the wrong way since he just didn't want any beef with the government, especially since he remembered how badly things usually end for heroes in stories from his old world. With Tuhishisha finally on board, Twining said they'd head to the capital to make his hero status official later, but first, it was time to throw a massive party for their brand new legend. Mark got real with the kid and told him he's the first hero Calendile has seen in 50 years, so even though it's gonna be a struggle, he's gotta step up and try. Out of nowhere, Toishi caught a whiff of something totally weird. Surrounded by wizards, the guy asks them for a quick lesson on magic since he's totally self-taught and only knows the 4 basic properties and pure magic. The pro-magicians were tripping over themselves to tell him everything, and the kid realized that being a servant in this world was actually a pretty sweet deal. But his life is his own, and he's gonna live it exactly how he wants. Marl was so relieved to see Tuishi and asked what the knights wanted, so Tuishi just played it cool and told him they officially recognized him as a hero. The guilds didn't believe him at first, but Toishi told them he'd be heading to the capital soon to prove his status check literally says he's a hero. He saw how stressed Marl looked and asked her if she was doing okay. She told him that being a hero in this country is a massive deal and asked if he even gets how serious it is. Marl stepped closer to Tuishi and asked again, her voice sounding super worried. Right then, a bunch of armed guys in black masks are zooming straight toward the intersection. The guy they were actually hunting was the hero, Mitsubo Tuishi. Oost totally agreed with Marl that being a hero is awesome, but he just wasn't nearly as mad as she was. Tuishi had no idea why everyone was being so serious, so Marl just grabbed his hand and pulled him outside. Heroes are actually just mutations in the human race. They're super rare, only appearing once in every few 100,000 or even 1,000,000 people. Their physical bodies are totally normal, but Tuishi and Marl finally made it back home, and the girl just crashed on her bed with a tired sigh. She tells him he has no clue what it's really like to be a hero here, where they're sent to fight the deadliest monsters outside the border, and the system actually kills them off because they're way too hard to control. Everyone actually hates heroes because one single person is as strong as a whole country's army, making them a massive threat to any nation. If this hero keeps causing this much madness, the army will be totally useless, and if the people start backing him up, he could take down any king he wants. The royals and nobles are totally freaked out by heroes, so they'd rather just take out anyone they can't control, and their first move is definitely going to be spying on them. He was in total shock, thinking there was no way this was actually real. These guys were meeting up just to kill, and it turns out the kingdom has been secretly wiping out heroes for 50 years before they could even register, which finally makes that old story he heard. It's not worth the effort because he doesn't know that people here think heroes ruin everything. So the religious nobles actually have their own anti-heroes to hunt them down. For over 50 years, this kingdom has used God and the royals as a total lie to hunt down legendary heroes. And even though Marl is a foreign princess with massive power, Tuishi isn't. He straight up asked if they were really there to kill him, and since Marl said it was possible, what was his next move gonna be? He knew his stats were already exposed, so they had to team up to survive before Calendale's assassins showed up to take him out. Tuishi asked Marl if taking down monsters would actually level him up and make him stronger, and she told him that's exactly how it works. He gets way stronger every time he levels up, and he just smirked because he's got a plan. Marl asked if she should use her powers to stay safe, and Tuishi told her she nailed it. So now they're heading out to hunt monsters so he can level up and finally control his own strength. This keeps the team from losing hope, and if they can't just fight their way out, they'll have to get sneaky and use their heads. Tuish invited her on a hike, and Marl straight up said she'd follow him wherever he went. She wasn't just following him, she was actually planning to level up her skills during the whole hike. The girl instantly whipped out her dagger to head out with Tuishi. They shared a quick hug as he apologized for dragging her into this mess, knowing that if they mess up now, the whole city of Calendale will turn against them. Talking to those knights might have been a total fail, but Marl told him to shake it off because he's finally got backup. He thanks her for having his back, and he's so hyped that he's literally about to burst into tears. He said he needed to grab some weapons, gear, food, and magic items, but when he asked about joining the guild, she told him it was totally impossible. The kingdom basically runs the guild as a genius way to find heroes, hunt monsters, and keep the whole population under control with cheap labor all at once. Tuishi tells Marl they gotta bail right now and only grab the important stuff, even though he hasn't even paid for the room yet. Inho brought up the idea of renting a house right in the city, is very clear. Let's try. Choi Pinho said he was thinking about renting a... She decided Tuishi is popping the question tomorrow and wants to find a spot in the city, but Hoipinia wanted to know exactly where they'd end up. Tell the person who called that he's at the crossroads and we'll hit them up once he finishes his business, since they're heading out at sunrise tomorrow. He figured it'd take those killers a few days to even realize they'd escaped from the intersection. He and Marl hit the road from the intersection that morning, and he didn't hold back on camping gear, spending a crazy 50 gold in just 1 hour. They stayed on high alert, watching their backs as they moved through the city streets. Luckily, the gates were wide open, and you could hear the whole city buzzing right behind the massive walls. Tvishe needed to get away from the crossroad knights, So Marl suggested they head into the southeastern forest where rumors say ancient ruins are hidden, because if they make it through, they'll end up right in the kingdom of Miscronia. Tuishi is 100% sure now that Moro definitely comes from this kingdom. Most kingdoms treat heroes like garbage, but Miscronia is a total paradise for them because the royals and nobles were all legendary heroes themselves, making it the perfect place to live. Man, things were just getting more and more hype. Tuishi and Marl headed straight for the ancient ruins. Right on the first day of their escape, the kids started training while Tuishi coached them on the right way to take down monsters. This was the first time the girl actually faced off against the boar in a total one-on-one showdown. He saw Marl dodge the monster like a pro, but her hit was super weak because she was clearly too scared to actually hurt a living thing. Finally, she took down the boar, and it let out one last roar as it crashed into the dirt. Marl asked Tuishi if he liked her fight, but he just told her she needs to seriously level up her dagger skills. As the sun started to go down, the group looked for a place to crash, but Marlux was seriously worried about predators since the forest was right next to them. Before ditching the city, Toei hit up the Magic Guild for a level 3 barrier, a magic power boost, and level 2 mana restoration for the camp. He threw up his magic shield to block the hit. He slammed his staff into the dirt right where they were gonna crash for the night. They ended up inside a magic circle that kept them totally safe from every monster trying to hunt them. Marl's jaw dropped, but the guy explained the magic is actually solid, telling her she can touch the shield and they're totally safe because it can even tank a hit from a massive troll. Tuishi suggested they grab a bite and started pulling snacks right out of the pantry. The runaways finally got to feast on steak, salty meat, and soup, and they totally demolished every bite. Marl was having a total blast mixing spices and cooking right next to her favorite person. She straight up tells them that her job is being a taster. Wrapping meat in bread makes it taste twice as good, so that's exactly how the kids back then used to eat their dinner. Eating outside made the food taste way better, and hanging with Marla helped Tuishi totally forget all his stress. He fought like a beast because at this point, they were officially traitors to the whole country. After 3 days of grinding, Tuishi hit level 16 and Marl reached level 7, so now they can basically crush those goblins without even trying. Marl mastered some epic new sword moves. The young man unlocked stealth and vigilance. The princess leveled up her scouting and survival, and Toishi snagged a magic eye plus level 3 poison resistance while banking his extra points for later. After 3 whole days of traveling, the group finally made it to the ancient ruins. The place looked like a massive ancient temple and was totally gorgeous, but there wasn't a single soul in sight. It's super weird that nobody's moved in yet, so maybe these kids are checking out every single inch of the ruins. Skeletons were scattered everywhere, all frozen in prayer, but the weirdest part was that there wasn't a single injury on any of them. Out of nowhere, Taisha calls the girl over and shows her a ring he found in the ruins that looks like it totally boosts magic. He figured this place was packed with loot, not just monsters to fight, since hunting for treasure is the best way for adventurers to make some serious cash. Tosha found some more cool gear in the ruins, but Marl suddenly started feeling sick and warned him that the items were totally cursed. They scored a massive haul of items that was literally piled up like a mountain. Marl was totally grossed out and refused to loot the bodies, but Tuishi reminded her the dead don't need gear anymore, and it's actually part of the ritual. She grabbed a reinforcement ring and told Marlo to pick a magic item, and while he thought about just stashing everything to sell for cash, he actually had a way cooler plan in mind. He picked out a super pretty ring and asked the girl to slide it onto her finger. Then they started praying right on top of those ancient, broken-down ruins. Tuishi and Maro found a statue in the ruins and figured it was some ancient god, but the girl wasn't buying it at all. Maybe it's some ancient god everyone forgot about. And while a history expert might recognize it, these kids don't have a single clue. Suddenly, the light over the ruins just went dark, and Tuishi and Marl couldn't tell if their eyes were playing tricks on them or if something real was actually happening. These creepy spirits reached out and begged them to send someone over. Suddenly, one of them swings a dagger and stabs him right in the chest, yelling that they need to send a hero. Nobody had any idea what was happening, as the ghosts screamed for a hero and then suddenly took themselves out with their own weapons. She was totally shocked to see one of the girls bleeding and standing just a step away from him. This dude was literally floating in the sky, calling out to Tuishi like he was some big-shot hero. The guy couldn't even see what his face looked like. The vision finally blinked out, and the crew let out a massive sigh because that whole thing was just straight-up bizarre. He asks Marl if every hero gets summoned through a ritual, but she explains that heroes are actually just super rare, talented people who are born naturally. In this world, the absolute strongest are mutant heroes summoned from another dimension. But who exactly is the hero these ghostly people called out for? Toysy and Marl collapsed onto the dirt, totally worn out because he couldn't find a single lead. Tuishi had no clue why this temple was built or who that kid was, but since he was totally stuck, he figured he'd just start playing this like a video game to find some answers. He can be summoned too, just like that hero! On the day they were supposed to meet, Tuishi wasn't at the crossroads and had nobody around to help, so with barely any money or gear, he just decided to become... He put his hand on Marl's shoulder and finally admitted he wasn't actually from this world. He used to live in a totally different place before ending up here. It was a super peaceful world. Marl kept it cool and promised that no matter how weird he gets, she's sticking with him forever. She gently held his hand and told him he was the most important person in her whole world. She felt like if this moment could just last forever, he'd be the happiest guy alive. Out of nowhere, he hears that familiar whistle right as an arrow slams straight into Mars's chest. Everything went down in a flash, and she let out a massive, desperate scream. They stayed hidden in the shadows and just kept blasting away. She threw up a shield and blocked every single arrow they fired at her. A bunch of people showed up wearing black cloaks and masks to hide their faces. Marl begged Ishi to stay alive and just keep hanging on. The killers snuck up to the bed, but it was totally empty because Tuishi had already grabbed the girl and made a run for it. He grabbed Marlin's hand and bolted into the city to lose the guys chasing them, but they caught up way too fast while he was just trying to give her a chance to recover. Marl was so out of it that she didn't even open her eyes. She set it down right by the stone pillar for every single one of them. He yanked the arrow out and realized it was poisoned, meaning it was game over, and Marl was officially a goner. Aisha was totally crushed because Marl was his whole world. She was the girl who appeared out of nowhere the moment he arrived in this world. This runaway is the reason he's the person. He loved living without any rules more than anything else in the world. He never realized how awesome it felt to have someone constantly thinking about him. She loved him for exactly who he was. And since there's nobody else like Marla in any universe, it's like he was born just to find her. He didn't even care about staying alive anymore. He just begged for Marl to finally open her eyes. The killers swarmed Tuishi, totally convinced they'd finally won and he was finished. He stared down the guys trying to kill him and realized they were the same monsters who destroyed his sense of right and wrong. We were stunned when she charged right into that massive army, and the enemies actually thought the guy had given up and was letting them kill him without a fight. The guy was absolutely fuming, and he only had one thing on his mind: getting revenge to win back his pride. That whole mob of killers was already right on top of them. The leader just laughed, calling him an idiot for trying to take him on solo when he clearly can't do a thing by himself. He acted like nothing mattered anymore. His head was in a super dark place, and he just wanted it all to be over. These were the people who killed his precious Marl, and he was so furious he was ready to end every single one of them. These killers got hit with a type of beatdown they didn't even know was possible. Seeing that dead guy standing right in front of him made his power explode by 10 times. As the rain started pouring down, Tuishi headed right back to the body of the girl he loved. The sky went totally wild with a massive storm, matching the insane rage he used to wipe out that entire squad of assassins. Only one killer was left standing, and Tavishi stepped up to finish him off too. He pressed the tip of his blade right against the masked girl's throat. He just couldn't stop thinking about how those scumbags were the ones who murdered his precious Marl. The killer tried to bolt, but the wizard blasted him with an ice ball and he went down hard. The magic totally locked her up, and she couldn't even move a muscle. Tuisha lifted her up and ripped the mask straight off her face. He asked the girl if she was there to take him out, warning her that she'd better be ready to die too. But Tui decided to show some mercy and promised to let her live if she just told him the whole truth. He uses his magic to make that killer feel some serious pain. He told her straight up that if she tried anything, he'd end her right then and there. She has to spill everything now, but it doesn't even matter if she talks or stays quiet because he's going to end her either way. She says Calendile sent a whole squad of assassins to take out the hero, and that Tuishi Mitsubo was actually pulled from the Knights to be trained as a hardcore special forces unit. Once they finished their training, they were officially called the Cleaners. The mercenary realized this special unit was actually the kingdom's army sent to wipe them out. But he revealed that the nobles were the ones who built this assassin squad specifically to kill the hero. Tuishi asks how they found them so fast, and the prisoner admits the Night Order leader gave them a hunting knife that led them straight to the ruins. She revealed that they used secret sealing techniques to forge this insane blade. Maybe there's a secret mark right on his sword's handle. This symbol is basically a GPS that tracks exactly where he's hiding. Ishui was shocked that this criminal just spilled all this. Marl was gone, and since this killer had to go too, the boy lunged forward and grabbed her by the throat with both hands. Now, he was only living for one thing, revenge, and literally nothing else mattered to him anymore. Twishy hears soft footsteps behind him and spins around to find Marl walking up with a super confused look on his face. He scoops Marl right up and pulls her in close against his chest. He was totally shocked she was still alive, and even she had no clue how she actually made it. She pointed at the ring from the ruins and said she probably only survived because it was actually enchanted with a magic spell. His magic eye showed him that this godly ring can save him from death, but it only works one time. Toishi was so hyped he felt like he was on top of the world. He pulled her into a hug and kissed her, thanking the heavens that he was finally saved. Morel looked at all the dead killers scattered across the temple ruins and realized Toishi was the one who took them all down. He calms her down and tells her she's safe now because he's going to protect her from absolutely everything. They pulled each other into another hug, and Toishi promised Marlu that everything was finally gonna be okay. Just then, a squad of knights reached the temple ruins, and Valtz rushed over to the hero to make sure he was doing okay. He looked around and saw a bunch of dead thugs and a girl tied up in ropes. Toishi grabbed his sword and told the captain to stop acting innocent because he knew the kingdom's knights had already sent assassins to hunt him down. Volt was totally shocked and had absolutely no clue what Toishi was even talking about. The hero snatched her up by the hair and told everyone she was there to kill him, revealing she's actually a pro-assassin from the Royal Knights named Furamu Forces. He finished off the last 12 assassins, and the shocked captain admitted he had every right to be mad. But he begged Tuishi to see that the kingdom of Calendile was actually trying to protect him, not just take him down. He gave a smug smile, saying that if the hit squad failed, Valtz would just try to trick him into a fake peace deal instead. The captain realized he totally missed the mark, and Toishi adds that the knights are just as crooked as the killers, like a partner who stabs you in your sleep, So now he's lost all hope because they're just puppets for the kingdom of Calendal. He draws a magic circle right in the air and tells them straight up that they're all dead. Marl rushed over and stopped the guy before he could pull it off. She tells Tuishi to chill out because even though she knows he hates the knights, they can't afford to make an enemy of the whole kingdom, especially since he might actually trust Captain Valtz again. These guys are best friends who teamed up to totally wreck that troll. Tuichi realized Marl was right about the captain being on their side, but Marl still straight up asked the guy if they could actually trust him. Volt dropped to one knee and swore a massive oath on his blade. After ditching the ruins and heading into the woods, Tuishi and Marl finally got rid of the magic items they stumbled upon and made it back to the city. The Tuis checked on the surviving assassin and found out her wounds were already totally fixed with healing magic. But she totally lost it and wouldn't let a single person get close to her. Everyone saw that coming, and even though she's a pro assassin, she totally blew the mission. But Toishi still had no clue who was actually running the hit squad or what the head noble was. Ama's crew isn't getting away with this, and they're about to get exactly what's coming to them. Does she really think handing this killer over to them is the right move? Marl actually looked like he was starting to feel bad for the girl. Ethan was super hyped to see Toishi again since it had been way too long. He looked at the kids with a confused face and asked the hero what the heck just happened. Ethan felt super awkward and apologized for crashing her date, but he told her he'd love to team up for another mission down the road. Tuishi has totally forgotten how to deal with boring days and pointless small talk. He could feel himself slipping further and further away from the person he used to be. The guild boss was super relieved the kids were safe, admitting he was actually starting to get pretty worried. Tuishi noticed the old man looked way thinner, and since Oost was working there, he started suspecting the guy was actually in league with the Calendile Kingdom and just faking his concern. Meanwhile, Oost paid the guy for all the loot Tuishi grabbed from the ruins and thanked him for the hard work. The old man asked Toshi about his plans, and Toshi said he was gonna chill tonight before visiting the Order of Knights tomorrow morning. Right as Oost handed back their adventure records, he announced that Tasha finally hit D rank and Marl made it to E rank, giving them a huge shout-out for their new ranks. The old man asks what his plan is as an adventurer, and he says he just wants to see how his life plays out, especially since it all depends on what this country does next. He knew Marl would have been toast without that ring, and since he couldn't just apologize for this mess, he told Oost he'd just bail on the country if things got sketchy, even though the kingdom definitely wouldn't let him go that easily. He paused for a second, and then swore that if it actually happens, he's starting an all-out war. Gapenio was totally shocked to see the kids show up after a whole week, and just when he thought they were back to do the right thing, they told him they were literally just looking for a place to crash. When the girl asked why they didn't rent the house, Twice told her she had it all wrong, and after some crazy stuff happened, Koi Pina actually let them move back into their old room. The crew was totally wiped out, so they just flopped onto their beds to finally get some rest. She looked around the room and realized that just a week ago everything was totally chill. But if they had actually worried about school or doing the right thing instead of just messing around, maybe their lives wouldn't. He stared at his hands, realizing he'd already ended 12 lives. But enemies were still coming for him to steal someone he loved, so he was going to get his revenge and fight for his. Twishy just laid in bed with his eyes shut, trying to convince himself that he wasn't actually a bad guy. Now that he was in a brand new world, he figured he could finally live life with zero rules and decided to just get used to that feeling. Everything he did led to this moment where he's finally a hero, but now the whole country is hunting him, assassins are everywhere, and morality has to put her life on the line. He was totally crushed, thinking that if he'd just skipped that first mission and never fought the troll, everything would be different right now. This whole mess only happened because he thinks he's some main character in a fantasy world, so we've got to figure out why he's acting like this. Tuishi was seriously starting to regret everything he'd just done. Marl wakes up and asks the boy why he's just chilling there in the pitch black. She was probably still freaking out over the fact that Tuishi actually killed those people. She knew he did it all for her, but she never wanted this and would have changed everything if she'd known it would end like this. If Marl hadn't picked Tuishi, things would have been way better and she wouldn't have been forced to ditch the city. He snapped his eyes open and screamed his head off because he just had a nightmare where Marl actually died. He saw the girl and realized it was all just a dream, right as Marl asked him if he was doing okay. Marl says she literally just woke up and was heading to the kitchen to grab some water. She slumped onto the edge of the bed in a total mood and asked the girl if she was actually disappointed in him. Marl sits down and asks why he's bringing this up. So he finally admits he took 12 lives because he thought she was dead. Even though these killers have families and people they love, he still ended them without a second thought. He wiped them out for good, and there's absolutely no going back from what he just did. Marl pulls him into a hug and tells him he was just trying to protect her, and since she would have done the same thing, he needs to stop beating himself up. Honestly, she's the only one to blame for this mess, and Tuishi thinks the whole thing is just totally ridiculous. He swore it was a lie. She was too afraid to speak up, and the girl admitted she was totally terrified. Right then, Tuishi finally snapped and started wrecking everything in his way. And even though he knew getting emotional wouldn't fix anything, he completely blacked out and won't stop until These kids were all bunched together, clinging to each other as tight as they could. Marl stroked Tuishisha's head and calmly promised she'd never leave his side. He totally broke down and cried right in front of Marl, admitting he'd lost his mind, and even though she's literally half his age, she just comforted and forgave him, something his old self would have never believed could happen. The guy straight up apologized to Marla. She starts blaming herself for everything that went wrong, but Tui cuts her off to say he's just happy she's alive. Even though he feels like garbage because he caused this whole mess and she still forgives him. Marl smacked Ishi right on the forehead and gave him a look to hype him up. She shouted that her nervous son isn't some wimp or a crybaby. He's a hero she totally looks up to, and if he doesn't realize that soon, he's going to be in huge trouble. Once she finally figured everything out, Marl stayed true to herself and backed him up so hard that he'll be grateful to her for the rest of his life. Marl drops the bomb that he's actually from another world and might be the legendary hero, and she's just hyped that Tui finally opened up after being so cold to her for. Tuishi couldn't even believe he used to be so cold to this girl. She tells Tuishi he needs to know the truth, like her real name and that she's actually a princess, but she admits she's just lying and dragging him into all her. He was dying to find out everything about her. He's also dying to learn every single detail about the person who means the world to him. Marl drops a huge bombshell. Her real name is actually Malie Vran Miskronia, the first princess of the Miskronia kingdom and second in line for the throne. She was forced to marry the Prince of Hebras, so she ditched the wedding through a secret tunnel in the treasure room. But she accidentally smashed a crystal ball that sees the future while making. God himself handed this gift down to humanity, and it's actually the legendary artifact of the Oracle's Sphere. This magic oracle ball just sat in the vault gathering dust because nobody knew how it worked, and nobody even guessed that you had to smash it to actually use it. She was super into it and asked what went down next. Marl tells them she's actually hearing a mysterious voice speaking inside her head. Who was she thinking about when she heard God's voice, and what did she ask the girl about his message? The princess explained that the voice told her to go to the Calendile crossroads where a guild would appear, and her mission was to seduce a black-haired guy named Tuishi. She was totally suspicious of that voice at first, but since it had already saved her life and she had no other choice, she finally made it to the crossroads. The second she saw Tuishi-san, she was totally head over heels for him. Did those kids seriously just start jumping on the bed? He straight up called her a total demon, But honestly, even that was being way too nice. Marl teased that if he kept hyping her up like that, she was gonna get even hotter. When he started whining right in front of her, she knew he'd finally cave and do whatever she said, and now he's actually being a total sweetheart. They've officially pushed themselves to the absolute limit. She finally opened her eyes the next morning, and the sun was already way up. He was pretty annoyed that he'd spilled all his secrets to Marlon Wayans, but he finally felt like himself again, even if he still had to double-check one last thing. He called it the voice of God, and that voice told the guy that Toishi had already completely forgotten about him. The hero straight up asks if the voice forced Marl to fall for him, but the voice reveals that meeting him was actually her own deepest wish. The voice also pointed out that he'd actually been a total gentleman in front of such a gorgeous girl. Toishi hung up and cringed at how awful that voice sounded, hating that some shady guy had actually put them in touch with Marl. This shady guy was totally shocked when Toishi suddenly went offline for no reason. Nobody expected anything else from him, but it was a total blast to watch, and I really wish he'd shown up sooner. The sun was out and the weather was honestly just perfect. The Knights of the Cross had a ton of major problems they needed to deal with. While they were eating breakfast, Marl asked Toishi what his big plan was for the day. The guy told them they had no choice but to follow the plan, and with guards watching their every move, trying to run away was totally pointless. They all grouped up and bolted for the exit, even though Hoi Pienius was begging for a quick break. Toishi let her know that he and Marl were heading straight for the imperial capital. They gave Koi Pini a huge thanks for the warm welcome. The hostess waved them off and told them to stay safe on the road. The cards zoomed down the twisty road right at the bottom of the mountains. Inside one of those, Marl and Toishi were backed up by Captain Valtz and his entire squad of royal knights. Thinking back on Marl's story, he realized he was still the one who ended those 12 lives, and there was no way he'd ever forget what he did. Is Marl really going to be able to forgive him? Maybe he can finally make things right with Firmu, but even if he does, it'll just look like he's begging for mercy, and she might not even want that from him. Marl whipped around to face Twisha, making her jump back in total shock. The girl told him to stop scowling because he was making a seriously scary face. Calendal isn't full of bad people, but a massive crime in the Royal Army has everyone on edge and things are getting super tense. Marl hands Toishi a letter from Commander Twining, explaining that Captain Waltz and his squad are already heading to the ruins to investigate what happened. Once the report about those high-ranking trolls getting taken out hit the army, they ordered a tracker to be hidden in the Medal of Honor, which was super shady, but the checkup proved. Suddenly, the top brass told everyone to stay away from the hero and just wait, but that felt super sketchy. So they did some digging and found out an illegal group called the Cleaners was actually hunting him down. He scrambled to defend himself, but realized these guys were actually fugitives from the intersection, so he quickly used a seal to call in the first wave of backup. He knew that as soon as those hero killers heard the troll was dead, they were probably already planning to take him out. Looking at the letters to Naive, it turns out the army made this call themselves, and since the troll was taken out on the 1st, the actual attack didn't happen until the 6th. On day 1, they just partied, ate, and passed out, which is probably when they wrote that report about the troll getting wrecked. And while Toishi spent the next day on a date, by day 3, they hit up the night order where he crushed his test to become a certified hero, and after packing their gear, they left the crossroads on day 4, only to get jumped halfway. It all went down way too fast, and since they moved at lightning speed, they've got to piece all these clues together right now. Marl's right. If we don't get the full scoop now, we won't know when they're gonna backstab us again, so we better play it safe. The carriage suddenly jerks to a halt for a quick break, but they're still nowhere near the royal capital. They finally called a timeout, giving Toishi a chance to actually catch his breath. It's been way too long since he checked his stats, and since he has no clue when the next poison attack is coming, he decides to max out his level 3 poison resistance and, once he finished, Tuishi decided to see just how strong his presence actually felt. He's standing right in the middle, feeling their insane power and massive numbers, and now he can finally unleash his awesome ability on all of them. If someone's name matches their face, they can tell exactly who's in the room, and honestly, that's a super handy power to have. If he learns how to stay under the radar, he'll be able to slip right past anyone who can sense danger. She also wanted to seriously ramp up production to make way more of them. He had a genius plan. If the kingdom says sorry, he's gonna demand a massive estate to build his new workshop. Alfana's capital officially holds 170,000 people, but when you add in all the traveling adventurers and traders in the slums, the total population hits a massive 200,000. The capital is guarded by 4 massive walls, and their cart was parked right by the 4th one that's still being fixed, a super busy area packed with shops, taverns, and even a market where they trade slaves. Deep inside is the commoner district where the shops and bars are way better than the outskirts, but past the 3rd wall, things get seriously fancy with magic schools, massive mansions, and elite knights guarding the castle. Inside that 2nd wall is where the rich nobles flex their fancy clothes while guards keep things quiet. So you won't find any adventurers hanging around this place. I just really wanted you to see the capital for the first time. This royal castle was absolutely massive, standing way taller than every other building in the city. Captain Waltz said his goodbyes, told the boys they were on their own now, and warned them to watch their backs. Waltz shook the guy's hand and told him to make sure Mrs. Marl stays safe. Captain Waltz left them with the first squad, but he stayed super friendly until the very last second just to show he actually cared about them. Inside the palace, a girl meets them and says she'll grant literally any wish they can think of. The kids were totally blown away by how fancy and beautiful the inside of the palace looked. She thought showing up to the meeting with a weapon was a bad move, but Marl told her that her mithril sword was actually totally fine. She totally agreed because that red ribbon on her sword was just a sign of her love, so the royals wouldn't find it disrespectful at all. Tuishi calls his servant over and tells her to stash his weapons somewhere safe. The lobby doors swung wide, and the group was finally called inside for their meeting. He tried to get her to chill, but she shut him down by reminding him she's a literal princess. Meet Marlier Varana Micronesia, the literal princess of the Kingdom of Micronesia. Tysia said sorry and stepped right up. They stepped right into the room where the big meeting was about to go down. Tuishi and Marl were waiting in the palace throne room, totally ready for the meeting. A group of kids walked right up to the throne where the ruler of Kalendal, Karendal, the 41st, was sitting. The emperor told the guys to stand up. Tavashti introduced himself, and then the ruler asked who his friend was. Marl introduces herself as Mr. Tuishi's guide, reminds Corendal they actually met 3 years ago, and thanks him again for the invite. The emperor looked super worried and gave Marla a really intense look. Even the emperor couldn't say no this time since it was the kingdom's 2nd princess involved. Corendal kicked everyone out of the hall except for Zontak because he finally recognized the girl as Maliere Vran, also known as Miss Cronia. Marl drops a major offer and tells the emperor to just play it cool and act like nothing happened. Mr. Toy showed up at the palace for one reason only, to finally be called a real adventurer, and he didn't have any other hidden motives at all. They have to keep the attacks on Toshi and the princess a total secret, and since the adventurers saved them without a single scratch, the ruler is left wondering what the enemy is even trying to pull. Marl told them they had to be extra careful to avoid another disaster and keep the whole thing a secret, which Karendal agreed to, even though he was totally sketched out by their location. Marl told the emperor straight up that if they were forced to go back home, She'd spill every single one of his dirty little secrets. If word gets out that a foreign princess was attacked, it's going to be total war. So Marl laid down two big rules: keep the ambush a secret, and don't let Miss Scronia find out she's even there. They had to stop any fights from breaking out with the neighbors, but for the kingdom of Calendile, that was actually a total piece of cake. So the emperor just nodded and promised to. Marl thanked the emperor, but then she told him she had one last favor to ask about Lord Tuishi. Tuishi decided to step up and ask them himself, since this deal is a total win-win and he really needs to get on their good side. The hero turns to Calendal and asks to use Alphen as their main fortress. Alphen's capital is super modern and everyone there greets you with a huge smile. It would be a total dream if he actually got to work in a place this beautiful. As the emperor sat there thinking, Tuishi knew this place was a total death trap with all these attacks. But he realized this was his big chance to finally get on the king's good side. He told them he's just a traveler helping out because he wants to, and even though he's chasing money and fame, he's never going to use his power for anything evil. To save the kingdom of Calendil, he's determined to be a hero and fight off any attack. So the emperor tells Zontac to handle everything. But Zontac warns that if things get too hard, he's just going to pack up and leave. Zontac von Meister bragged that he's tight with the king and told everyone they better not forget his name. The new kids all traded names and were totally hyped to meet each other. Zontac told him to just keep it real and stop being so formal, since he was totally overacting like a professional anyway. The scouts finally gave them the update on the hero, but everything went crazy so fast that the nobles near the army just turned tail and ran. Zontac straight up admitted that the way he treated the characters in Princess Molière was totally messed up. He's super thankful to the heroes. If the Princess of Malaya, the kingdom's biggest treasure, had been taken out in secret, it would have been a total disaster. Nobody expected. He stepped up and told them that since heroes are popping up everywhere, the government wants to own all their info, and even though some heroes hate the idea, he wants to know if they're down. When they asked for his wish, he straight up told them he just wants everyone to stop talking about him. Marl was totally down with Tuisha's idea, but then Zontac suggested they take a different path instead. So Hero, what was their next big move and what were they actually trying to pull off? Tui asks for a simple bath and a workshop for his weapons and alchemy, while Marl wants a massive bed, a comfy sofa, and a butler and maid to help host all the friends she's gonna meet. Zontac promised to make all their wishes come true, but he warned them it wasn't gonna be easy. He tells the kids to chill at the castle and garden for a bit, while he works on stripping power from those strict nobles in the military. They decided to stick around the castle, staring down from the high towers to see everything happening in the city below. So Toshi and Marl ended up staying right there in the capital of Alphen. Marl flashed Toyoshi Zai a sneaky smile and told him there was something she really wanted. Tuishi and Marl have been stuck in the palace for 10 days straight, and they haven't done a single thing yet. Marl realized they'd be stuck as hostages forever if this kept up. But right then, a maid walked right up to them. She gave the word that their base is finally good to go. The crew headed over to check out their brand new place. Marl was totally hyped, saying their new base looked like a legit mansion. It even had a direct path to the main road. The whole place was tucked away in the trees and super quiet. Tuishi was shocked because the house was way bigger than he expected. Cleaning a massive place like this would be a total pain, but Marl told him Zontac would just get a manager or the maids to handle it. They head inside and meet Jack Mason, who tells them Lord Zontac put him in charge of the mansion. So after the group introduces themselves, he offers to give them a tour of the whole place. The whole squad rushed into the massive hall, hit the kitchen, and scoped out the dining room. Tucked away in the back of the house is a living room and a workshop where they whip up animal feed and practice alchemy. He was hyped to find a forge and a bathhouse, plus a fireplace and toilet that all ran on magic, even though it clearly cost a crazy amount of money. She told Jack she was totally impressed by how cozy the place felt, but the manager snapped that she shouldn't talk to the servants like that. Our hero figured a polite old guy like Jack wasn't used to people being casual with him, especially since he was a big shot on the Kingdom of Kalendiel's payroll rather than just some random worker. She hands Jack a massive bag of gold and tells him to use it for food and supplies since they're just getting settled into the new estate. He didn't want to owe the Kingdom of Kalendiel a single favor, especially since they were already paying for his house's upkeep. Marl asks where the maid is, and Mr. Jack explains that his niece actually works there, but she's just out on a shopping run right now. Twishi totally blanked on the fact that big mansions usually have guests, and right then, Mr. Jack's niece Mabel showed up and politely apologized for being late. She said sorry for the trouble and finally told them her name. Marl put her in charge of watching over them. The maid told Twishi and Marl she was totally down to work with them, and she was so hyped that she actually dropped her groceries all over the floor. Mabel said sorry, mentioned she had something super important to do, and just bailed. Jack told the kids to ignore his shaky legs and explained that she was only acting weird because of some creepy guy. Marl really felt for the girl and thought Mabel was actually super chill and friendly. Mabel told Jack he better check with her before making a move, since she shouldn't have to teach him how to treat a girl right. The manager cleared the air and said she was just gushing about her favorite heroes. Mabel asked Twishi what he wanted for dinner and told him she'd grant any wish he had in a heartbeat. He told Marl to pick the food since he was down for anything, but she couldn't decide because they'd been eating nothing but fancy royal meals lately. She's craving some fish and rice, and the maid is totally down to make it happen. She held his hand up for the girls to see as his eyes popped wide open. He asked Mabel if they had any rice, and she told him he could find some in the Alphine markets if he looked around, which was great because Twishi was totally starving. All he really wanted was a chance to get in there and show what he could do. The hero was absolutely starving and crushed his first bowl so fast he immediately asked for more, while Twishi couldn't believe he'd been in this world for a month without even knowing rice existed. He was so obsessed with this dream that absolutely nothing else was ever enough for him. Marl gave the guy a suspicious look and asked if he seriously loved rice that much. Twishi started to wonder if this thing was actually a legit product from the kingdom of Miss Coronia. He's definitely hitting up this kingdom for the rice, but it's pretty clear he still doesn't have a clue how this world works. Maybe he was wondering if this was what his hometown finally tasted like. Our hero nodded and went right back to crushing his bowl of rice, and the princess started scarfing hers down too. Because of that, they're actually starting to care about doing the right thing. The bathhouse and that new mansion were looking seriously next level. Marl was totally losing it over how massive her new bathtub was, and the whole thing felt like a total dream. The kids were chilling in the warm pool like it was total paradise, and Twishi was falling in love with this world more every second. Marl asked the guy what it was actually like back in his hometown. He wants to tell her everything, but since talking about future tech could totally mess up the timeline, he just says his city is super peaceful with zero demons or wars. Life in his town was a total struggle since you needed cash for everything. So Marl thought this new spot sounded like a straight-up dream. Toichi Grand called the place a total nightmare, saying 30,000 people give up every year because life is so brutal and everyone is just a tiny, replaceable part in a broken system. Marl asks what the plan is for tomorrow, and Toichi says they're heading to the Adventurers Guild in Alphine first because even though his weapon is fine, he really needs some new armor. The princess stopped him and asked where he was headed in such a massive rush. A guy suggests hitting the new city's market for some cheap loot, and Marl is totally down. But then she mentions a rice restaurant before straight up asking the hero if he wants to hook up. The guy definitely wasn't gonna turn down a good meal or some action. She climbed out of the pool, totally convinced that she finally secured the win. She asked Marl where she learned to be such a pro at flirting, and Marl confessed she literally just asked someone for the secret. The royal maid showed her everything, and Tuishi was totally shocked by Marla's endless curiosity, realizing this night was never going to end. He decided to hit the library with Marlo the next day because he was still totally clueless about Eliar and needed to dig up some serious info. This library was seriously loaded with books. It was like a total gold mine. Every single book here is written by hand, so it looks like typewriters haven't even been invented in this world yet. Toishi asked the princess for a quick tour, and she was totally down to show him around. She told him that LER actually had a bunch of different civilizations back when it all started. It's already December 3rd, and 2,203 years have flown by since the gods first created this world. In this world, religion brings everyone together, and sometimes the gods even drop down to earth to pull off miracles and hand out crazy magical gifts. Tuisha asked if the guy who gave him that treasure was a god too, and once the girl realized he meant the pearl, she told him he was totally right. The books say the Savior, the goddess who built this world 2,203 years ago, gave her the pearl because she totally trusted Marla. The hero asks what happened to the goddess, and the girl explains she fell into a forever sleep, giving her body to the world so a new heir could finally be born. As Tuishi learned more, he realized the good goddess talking to him was actually one of the oldest ones around. But why was he even summoned to this other world? And what's the real story here? Toichi realized he needed to start using his brain more since he wasn't exactly a genius, especially if he wanted to just chill and live a quiet life in this new world. Marl asked the hero if he was doing all right, or if he was just getting bored of hearing her talk. Since he was actually down to listen, she told him they should go read up on the continent. Marl explains that the south is freezing, while the north is actually warm, and their home in Calendile and Cronia is on a continent called Pit, which means the first continent. That's when the princess whipped out a map showing exactly how Toishi Pita is divided up. Check out this map of the Kingdom of Calendile, which is easily one of the oldest nations left on the entire planet. They grow way more food than they can eat, making them super rich from trade, but since they're nowhere near the ocean and have no salt mines, they have to bring in all their salt from outside. Mamula controls a ton of forests, but their wood industry is actually a total mess. Marl then pointed to her home, the Kingdom of Micronia, which takes up the whole eastern and southeastern side of the continent. With lakes, rivers, and seas everywhere, this place is loaded with water and all the seafood you can eat. They call this place the Land of Travelers because it links up ports from all over the world, and everyone says that literally everything eventually finds its way to Cronia. All that water has its good and bad sides, but she made sure to remind everyone that Cronia is the one sending sea salt over to Calendile. She's really not sure if Miss Cronia has what it takes to actually beat Calendile. Gifels is a huge mountain kingdom sitting east of Pit, while the elves keep their villages tucked away right by the forests. Marl let out a sigh, saying that's pretty much how things are on the continent now. But then, he asked Toishi what he liked the most. The guy took a second to think, and then told them that Miss Cronia's kingdom was easily his #1 pick. Marl was clearly hyped to hear that. He promised the princess he was being totally real and giving her the straight truth. Marl got suspicious and asked if he was only saying that because of the unlimited rice. She really hoped that one day they'd finally be able to just walk around Miss Cronia together. She asked if she'd have to get married, but the girl told her that's not happening since she's never going back home. Marl suggests that Toichi should go take a quick stroll through the market. The whole place was buzzing with energy as sellers hawked meat, flour, and even fresh salt that just arrived all the way from Miscronia. Tomorrow I'm gonna spend all day checking out the prices and haggling for the best deals at every single stall. They headed out of the market totally stoked with all their new gear, especially the fresh clothes they picked for tomorrow. She saw the new apartments had literally everything anyone could need, so he suggested they go check out the market outside the castle. They expected way more stuff to be there, but then a group of kids spotted a shop that looked super cool. But it turns out this wasn't a regular shop. It was actually a brothel. Marl knew exactly what was up and told her to get out of there right now because he didn't want to watch. She got super annoyed and asked if he actually liked those trashy girls, but he just told her he was curious about what they were selling. In this world, things like human trafficking and the red light trade are just a totally normal part of life. A merchant walks up to Aisha and brags that his slaves are super healthy, totally obedient, and even know how to fight. The guy looked at one of the slaves and was totally shocked to realize that a real person could be bought and sold just like a piece of junk. He felt a wave of sadness looking at these tiny girls who were already forced into slavery. Tuichi felt this massive wave of sympathy for them. The moment he arrived in this world, he saw people living like slaves who were too scared to even look up from the ground. Out of nowhere, Teveshi spots two massive guys dragging a girl away, but she's fighting back and screaming that she'll end them if they even try to sell her. She got slammed onto the ground and didn't even move, leaving the rest of the group totally clueless about what just happened. This was clearly magic meant to lock a slave down so they couldn't even move. The trader snatched the girl up with one hand and slashed the price, telling the guys they could do whatever they wanted with her now that she was theirs. And then, the group just walked off with her in tow. Tuaja was still a total newbie in this world, but he already had a pretty good handle on how the local laws worked and could tell that slaves here were treated like nothing more than property. This was the brutal truth about the messed up world he was stuck in. Marl saw Tuishi's face change and told him to just bail if he was feeling that bad. Crazy stuff like this happens all the time here, and since he's staying, he's just gotta get used to it. Even when this goes down, everyone just acts like it's totally normal. This guy asked Marl if she was totally blown away by what they'd done. Marl looked at the hero in total confusion, saying she could only guess what his world was actually like. She doesn't care about any of this at all, because to her, they were nothing more than slaves. This crowd is a mix of broke adventurers, sold-off merchant daughters, poor kids, and even criminals. But since there's no way out once you're a slave, she's just trying to block it all out. She pulled Tuishi into a hug, totally sensing how he was feeling deep down. Marl told the hero it was time to head back, and he was totally down for it. Marl suddenly stops dead in his tracks and looks over to see a super mysterious girl standing there. She was chained up against the wall with a sign around her neck that said she was the very first one for sale. She looked so much like Tuisia, it was honestly wild. This straight-up killer was the one actually calling all the shots. Tuishi and Marl were totally staring at this one girl out of the whole group. The trader caught Tuisha staring and told him he had great taste, especially since this girl was a brand new arrival. She's a mid-rank adventurer who's a beast at martial arts, but if he uses his domination magic, she'll have to do exactly what he says without question. Since he's never heard of domination magic, he's gonna explain exactly how it works. This link connects the servants to their master so they have to follow every single order, which is basically the whole point of this submission magic. If they don't follow orders, they're breaking the deal, and the slave will suffer insane pain or even straight up die. She recognized the magic from the market right away and asked the merchant how much the girl cost. He says it's gonna cost at least 20 gold coins. He told the merchant to hold up and snatch the contract to see what it actually said. Marl was totally shocked and asked Quixie why he picked this girl, but even if the hero himself asked, he still wouldn't have an answer. The bard was only thinking about one thing. Could he actually save this girl by buying her? The second blood hit that contract, the deal was officially sealed. After grabbing the cash, the merchant explains the rules. The owners have to provide food, clothes, and a place to stay, and if they ever want to get rid of him, They have to bring him back to the market so the merchant can buy him back. The merchant shoves Prama toward Tavashi and tells her that this guy is her new owner now. She knew exactly who he was, and the hero asked her to tag along. He reached out to help her up, but she couldn't stop thinking about how those same hands had choked her. Our hero demanded to know what this whole plan was about and why they were targeting her of all people. She would have taken him out in a heartbeat if she saw even one opening. She lunged right at her new master, forcing Toishi to use his magic to stop her. She just let her hands fall and admitted she lost, realizing that he was officially her master now. He really wants to grab a warm blanket from his secret spot and wrap her up. That one little move totally caught Farah off guard. Tuisha saw she was finally awake and asked her to join him again, even though he knew Freedom wasn't going to listen to a word he said. The merchant walks right up to the girl and tells her he totally forgot something. Everyone knows slaves have to do exactly what they're told, especially if they used to be criminals. Look, we don't mess with any of that creepy forced stuff because everything has to be totally consensual. So let's just keep things respectful and safe. The forum didn't even hesitate and promised to go all out with everything they had. Mabel was totally shocked when she saw the group didn't come back alone. She was totally blown away when she found out she was actually a slave bought from the market. Toishi told the servant straight up that Furama was actually their guest. Mabel promised to hook her up with a room, some food, and a hot bath, saying she'd handle everything else on her own. He felt totally crushed because he knew jumping in to help would just make things super awkward. He was super worried about her being left all alone. Toichi couldn't believe Firm was still breathing after getting absolutely wrecked with all those burns and cuts. Suddenly, the girl dropped to her knees and grabbed Toisha's clothes. He reminded her that she wasn't some servant, she was actually a guest. Marl rushed over to help and told her to just chill out. Marl dragged her off to the bathroom and made it super clear that no boys were allowed inside. Standing there alone, he realized his control magic wouldn't even affect a girl like her. Right as Mabel announced that a room and some food were finally ready for their guest. If he can actually help her out, he seriously needs to just say so. Toishi just straight up says sorry to the maid. While the girls were relaxing in the bath, Marl ended up getting totally soaked all over again. She got totally real for a second and admitted she has no idea what's actually going through Toshi's mind. Marl was peeing on the girls' backs and just said she had no clue either. She honestly still has no idea who Toishi-san really is. Everything he says totally flips the way she sees the whole world. Amu straight up admitted she's a killer, but things are way different now. Marl thinks Toishi is way too kind to be a killer, just like his homeworld. But Furama snaps back that a place that peaceful doesn't even exist. She couldn't handle a world where even little kids who can't fight back are forced to serve the country. But what does Marl actually want to do for herself? She says Tavishi-san does everything he can for her, but she still doesn't know if anyone has ever actually loved her. This brutal world really messed her up, so now she'll just calmly tell her exactly what's bothering her without holding back. They turned to Mu and Envy and asked if this was seriously her house. Marl said the house was definitely hers and confessed she was totally in love with Amazon. This slave used to be a killer, and right then, everything finally clicked for him. Marl asked Toishi why she was so obsessed with every little thing about the killers. Unman claims he doesn't feel guilty anymore, but he's not getting off that easy since Amu has totally snapped and is miserable because of him. He got all red and admitted that even with his insane strength, he's still just human and can't make everyone happy. For a split second, she actually thought this guy was trying to help her. 3 whole days went by, and Mabel still couldn't get up to the mezzanine to snag that box. Furama just yanked it out like it was nothing and handed it right over to the maid. Mabel stared at the girl in shock and called her their new guest, but Furama shut her down and said she's actually a slave. The maid didn't even let him finish, said sorry, and told him she had to bounce. Fromu realized that being a slave and a guest at the same time is a total nightmare. She wasn't sure she could stay with them anymore since she'd been searching for her real home for ages. She was the third kid in a family full of knights. Suramu's biggest dream was to become a legendary knight just like her dad. But he told her straight up that girls just can't be knights. He kept pushing her to act normal like her sisters, but Furama always felt like a total outcast. All she wanted was to find where she belonged and become a knight, just to make her dad proud. Final polish. Finally, all her hard work actually paid off. Since she already knew how to fight, they gave her a real mission. It was a total struggle, but she managed to join. She finally found her squad and a place to belong. But everything changed on one specific day. She was the only one left after all her friends died, and it only got worse when her own home put her on trial. Her dad was kicked out in total shame, and every dream she wore. Marl looked at Tuishi with a faint smile and warned him that getting involved with cold-blooded killers just wasn't worth it. I mean, those guys really put him through a world of pain. Just as Furamu steps into the room, the whole truth finally hits her. She said she totally regrets how everything went down. Marl said that Tuishi just really wanted to be a hero. Marl pulls the girl into a hug and tells her that Furamu is a victim in all this too. She was only doing her duty, but it ended with both of them getting totally wrecked. Marl stood up from the table, looking like he was totally ready to get serious. She stepped in and told everyone they were gonna do it her way. Even if nobody else can let it go, she's the only one who's gonna forgive them. He had no clue what she was planning, but then Marl dropped a total bombshell. She's actually a princess. Tuishi asked Marl to spill the truth about Furama and explain what she did that was so totally unforgivable. The moose said that even though Marla sounded like she was talking nonsense, her plan was actually a total pro move. She joined the squad ready for anything, since fighting was the only thing they were ever taught to do. She lost the fight, handed over everything she knew, and ended up getting seriously wrecked during the mission. He saved her life when she was sold off, but will he actually be mad that she wants her freedom after being treated so badly? Her life is totally messed up, and her squad would completely turn on her if they saw her acting like this. She can't be forgiven for her friend's death, but even though they were both killers, they were still friends. She honestly can't forgive herself, so she's throwing her whole life into solving this mess. Furamu asks Marl if she can finally stop being a slave, but Marl says there's no way out since it's her punishment for being a criminal. The group couldn't figure out why this weird guy was helping a slave and an old enemy, but maybe it's because in this world, killing someone is actually a massive deal. He turned to the slave girl and asked if they messed up and how they could help. Then he looked her in the eyes and apologized for totally wrecking her whole life. Our hero swore right then and there that he'd do whatever it takes to make up for the huge mistake he made. He straight up asked Faram to move in and live with them. The servant was totally blown away by this offer. The next day rolls around and Tuishi is totally ticked off because he's already late. He spent the whole night overthinking everything until he couldn't even get any sleep. His jaw hit the floor when he saw Frama's new look, because Marl and Mabel had totally transformed her into a classy lady. Marl explained that Furama didn't see herself as a guest, but as a slave. So they decided she'd just work as their servant from now on. Jack mentioned Mabel was totally swamped with all the work and thought this was a great move, while Amu thanked everyone and promised to help out whenever they needed her. Deep down, she just really wanted to feel what it's like to be loved. Tuishi heard those words and immediately snapped to attention, trying to figure out exactly what she was talking about. Furman quickly said she was just kidding, but the guy thought it sounded way too real coming from her. It's honestly wild to think she joined the squad just because she used to be a literal assassin. Down at the market, we meet this guy named Tuishi. A messenger from Calendile Castle showed up with a mission for the hero, but before Tuishi could even react, The servants tied him up and dragged him away. Back at the castle, the maid told the mistress that the job was done and everything was finally ready to go. She walks into the room where Tuishi is tied up on the floor and straight up offers to be his girlfriend. Twisted up on the floor in a super awkward spot, our hero had absolutely no clue what was even happening. The princess marched right up to Tuishi and told him he belonged to her, acting like it was the biggest honor of his life. Our hero figured this was just another prank from Princess Calanella, the girl who runs the Calendale Kingdom. Tevay told her it wasn't right to stay if she didn't need anything, so he bailed immediately since a guy shouldn't be hanging out in a single girl's room. The princess looked surprised and offered the hero some tea and a chat, but even though it seemed like a friendly hangout, the whole vibe was just off. Toys had no clue what Princess Calanella was about to pull off. He asked why he should even stick with her, and the princess told him Tuishi was the bravest guy in 50 years and that together they'd make the kingdom the richest in the world. The princess says it's always been this way, but the guy needs her to explain exactly what she means. It was hard to tell if she really wanted to be friends after that disaster of a meeting. But then, she drops a bomb and says she already knows everything about Toishi. She caught sight of a young guy while her dad was chatting him up. He'd actually been crashing at the castle for 10 whole days already. Toshi had no idea why he hadn't. Tuishi told her he wasn't interested in any of that, since he only helped her dad for the cash and respect, not because he wanted to be in charge. He was already locked in and ready, and that's exactly when the maid walked in with some tea. The princess treated him to some super rare tea that only the richest royals can afford, and after one sip, Toishi was blown away by how crazy good it smelled. I wonder which kingdom this tea actually came from. It was actually a super strong royal sleeping pill, so the guy just dumps the whole cup on the floor and asks her why she even needed it. After he proved his skill could knock out anyone with that sleeping pill, the princess decided to use Ishi without caring about his secrets or how brave he really was. The maid apologized to the hero, explaining she totally messed up and just got the herbs mixed up. Toishi wasn't even shocked because this princess makes her own rules and has no problem sending people straight to their deaths. It's a total bummer because this kingdom is supposed to be completely free of evil. But even after all that, the princess's face didn't have a single scratch on it. She thought the whole thing was hilarious, and now she wanted the hero for herself more than ever as she turned to her maid Stella. Princess Nanira told her to fire up that pendant! Tuishi knew right away that he was looking at a magical instrument. Nanira pulled the maid into a big hug and told her she did an amazing job. The princess asks him what that ancient magic feels like, but then the hero realizes her pendant is actually hypnotizing him and he's completely frozen. Nanira blamed him, saying if he'd just agreed to be with her from the start, none of this would have happened, but now it's way too late to fix it. She looked him straight in the eye and asked him to be her friend. The princess just smirked and said she's gonna do whatever it takes to get exactly what she wants. She took a swig of the stuff Stella gave her and leaned over Vichy, who was lying there totally still. The hero asks what she just downed, and she tells him it's not poison, but a love potion that makes sure she won't feel any pain. He was super annoyed that even his poison resistance skill was totally useless here. Nanira was totally feeling the drink and started unbuckling the hero's belt right then and there. The princess was already feeling the heat and was totally desperate to get closer. Both girls are getting super hands-on with him, acting totally curious and really putting their all into it. They were actually pretty shocked to see what kind of shape he was in. Stella told her mistress she had to stay tough and couldn't let any weakness show. But Nanira wasn't having it and ordered Stella to go first. Leami didn't even try to argue and just followed the princess's orders. He still had zero control over his body, and if he didn't act fast, he'd have both the princess and the maid breathing down his neck. The maid starts pulling his pants down, but he somehow breaks free and just bolts. Nanera was literally shaking with rage because he just bailed in the middle of everything, and he's definitely gonna regret being such a coward later. Tuaj was busy deciding who'd get his first time, and he straight up told the princess it was gonna be Marl while calling her a total idiot. Right then, the door bursts open and Marl walks in, asking the guy if he's actually okay. The messenger filled her in on every single detail. Nanera's eyes widened when she realized the girl was actually Princess Malaya Miss Greenia. She always hogs the best stuff and keeps Marl away from the hero, straight up admitting she only cares about what she wants, which is exactly why everyone calls her selfish. Nanir snapped and told her to stop the accusations since Marl was the one who rejected the kingdom's deal. And after reading a letter from her sister, she was totally insulted. But Marl He grabbed his head in total panic because he was about to lose his innocence. And it was even crazier since these princesses were actually best friends. Things got violent fast, and the hero straight up asked if they were even childhood friends. Marl stared at the hero in total shock and asked why he even thought they grew up together. Tuisha's squad finally breathed a sigh of relief when they saw that everyone was actually just vibing and getting along. Right then, the king and his guards burst into the room, asking what the heck just happened. The king had absolutely no clue about the madness unfolding right inside his own palace. The king finally realized what was going on, so he apologized to the hero and took full blame for losing track of everything. Tui told the emperor to stop being so scared, but even though the king had tried to kill him 1,000,000 times and he wasn't even from Carindel, 41st said he wasn't. The king accused the guy of abandoning the kingdom, leaving him totally stunned, while Marl used the drama as an excuse for her hit jobs and told the king they needed to talk. Word spread fast that Princess Nanera and her friend were getting locked up for 2 whole months. Stella poisoned Mr. Tuishi, and now she's straight up facing the death penalty. Our hero thought this was totally messed up because the princess was the real villain, yet the poor maid was the one getting executed just for following orders she couldn't refuse. Tuishe says the royals are never wrong, so if anything goes sideways, the maid gets executed and the princess is going straight to jail. Marl tells him not to sweat it, but Tuishi gets totally annoyed and asks if any of this is actually supposed to be normal. Marl, you gotta get the hero to chill out. Zontak told the hero that since he was so stressed out, they weren't going to cancel the execution or hide the evidence, but they'd still let him keep the girl as a slave if he really wanted. Marl thanked Zontak for being so incredibly generous. He was pretty sure there was no way the princess and her maid would ever agree to a deal like that. She felt like jail was way too harsh, so she turned on the hero and blamed him, saying if he'd just been her friend, Stella wouldn't be facing execution right now. Zontak steps up to the princess and says he's taking her to the monastery, while Nanera looks Marala in the eye and swears she won't stop until she's taken everything from her. Marl told the king to wrap it up because she was totally drained and just wanted to head back home with Tuisi. As soon as they stepped outside, Marl realized she was always having drama with that girl. She's just hyped that Tuishi is all hers, and the hero was feeling super grateful by the next morning. Meeb and Furumu were totally stoked when they saw their owners finally come back home. She bolted over to the kid to see if he was hurt, because her heart totally stopped when she first heard the news. She was a total nervous wreck and stayed on edge 24/7. Moral warned that if anything went wrong, everyone back at the estate would be totally freaking out. All the maids shouted at the same time, telling the guy not to do anything crazy. Tuishi's danger sense helped him spot the poison tea, but he would have totally freaked out if it was meant for Marla or Furumu. They were basically his family now, and he told them he was super sorry for making everyone worry. He felt totally at home, and Frima excitedly told him that she and Mabel already had dinner ready to go. The moment they got back to the estate, he felt totally recharged and all his exhaustion just vanished. But when he walked out of the bathroom, he caught Marl chugging something from a bottle. He rushed over to the girl in a total panic, demanding to know what was actually inside that bottle. Marl gave him a mysterious smile and warned him he wouldn't be sleeping tonight because her body was ready to burst from the inside out. It's already been a few days since Furama started his new gig at the estate. She woke up and decided she was gonna give it her absolute all that morning. Mabel got busy making breakfast while Uncle set the table, and even though Furama had to swap out the bedsheets, she was actually super happy to have so much work to do. The ex-slave stepped into the room and apologized to the master and mistress for showing up without an invite. She totally busted them getting cozy, and right then, Marl straight up asked Toei if he was into maid outfits. The hero says it's way too much, but Marl tells him his body is reacting differently because he's so embarrassed, and then she shuts the door behind her. Let's just go up to her and ask if she's swapped out the sheets yet. Mu the maid says the master is going to be in his room for a while, so she'll just swap them out later. Mabel was totally shocked and asked what he was doing there so late. But the former slave just told her she wasn't ready to know yet. Mabel got super annoyed and reminded her she's the head maid, but Firm wouldn't back down and demanded another job. Mabel was so hyped that she totally dropped her bucket of water. A bit later, the head maid walked in to find the guy totally wiped out at the dining table. Mabel checked on the master and offered to whip up a light snack, but Tuishi turned her down, saying he was totally wiped out and just wanted some peace and quiet. Mabel could tell the guy was totally worn out from dealing with Princess Calanella and wanted to help him out, but Farah Mutata thought it was better to just leave him alone. Just then, Jack storms in and calls Mabel out for leaving the pot on the fire and making a ton of other mistakes. She admits she's still a total newbie maid who can't keep up with her uncle, but since she wants a cool special skill, Jack tells her to try the Tuishi Onigiri. Mabel felt totally at peace whenever Marla smiled, and she thought Firamu's massive chest was so huge it could basically heal people just by looking at it, wishing she had just one of those traits to finally become a better person. The maid offered the hero a massage to help him finally relax and shake off all that exhaustion. Mabel reached right under her master's collar and started massaging his neck. But even after all that, her help barely did anything for Tuish. He told the head maid to put some muscle into the massage since she wasn't a kid anymore, but Mabel snapped back that she was already giving it everything she had. The guy tells her to just start walking all over his back. This totally catches the maid off guard. She's never even dreamed of doing something that crazy before. He didn't get why Mabel was freaking out, since this massage is super popular back home and totally normal to him. After hearing what the guy said, she kicked off her shoes and did exactly what he wanted. This new massage style worked way better, and Tuishi was totally loving it. Mabel was loving it just as much as he was, feeling the heat from the guy's body right under her feet. The maid kept asking how Tuishisha was doing, feeling totally stressed that she was basically stepping all over the back of the country's legendary hero. Toichi told Mabel to stop holding back, and as she really let loose, she felt a total rush of pure excitement. Just then, Marl walks in and is totally shocked to see the maid going wild while stomping on Toisha's back. She finally realized it was just a massage and felt super annoyed that she didn't have healing magic to help the hero recover. He says restoration magic is awesome, but honestly, he's still doing just fine without it. Marl snapped and called him a total creep, asking if he seriously enjoyed getting stepped on by her. The massage was finally finished, and Toshi gave Mabel a big thanks for helping him out. The head maid was so proud of herself for helping the guy that she couldn't even hide her massive blush. She turned to the guy and told him she'd be down to give him another massage whenever he wanted. Marl was absolutely fuming after hearing those words, and Toishi could tell things were about to go south. Out of nowhere, Marl shoves the guy in the gut and jumps right onto his back. She even wanted to try stepping on it herself, but Tui swore it was just a massage and he wasn't into anything weird. Marl is already super heavy, But the girl who ignored Tuishi just starts dancing right on the guy's back. He begged Marla to stop, but then he whispered that his tiredness had vanished like magic and he'd never felt so comfortable with someone getting this close. Jack tells Furama over by the door that Tuishi and Marl make a pretty good team, but the girl totally disagrees. She literally tried to murder her owner, thinks it's totally weird that he's actually worried about her, and honestly just loves creepily watching him and his mistress. The old man shook his head, just hoping his niece wouldn't start acting totally weird out of nowhere. People were screaming for help all over the village while a creepy buzzing sound filled the air. Toichi was getting a seriously bad feeling about everything going down. He spotted the swarm and blasted them with a ton of magic to wipe out the whole army. The bug swarm slammed into an invisible wall and the monsters just crashed straight to the dirt. Honestly, nobody was even surprised because that's exactly what the hero always does. Marl warned that using that much power would totally wreck their own home, and next time, they're coming to finish everyone off for good. Just the day before, Toishi and Marla came up with a pretty wild idea. They hit up the guild to make some quick cash and grabbed a mission from the villagers of Vieto. Just yesterday morning, Tavisha got a phone call from the voice of God himself. He told the kid to stop ignoring him and listen up because he had something massive to tell him. This voice warned him that a massive flood was coming in just 2 months, and he had to get the word out to everyone fast. He asked Marla what the deal was with this whole great flood thing. She said it was totally normal, but Tuish was dying to hear every single detail about that flood. Marl explains that the Great Flood is a massive monster invasion that happens every 20 years, and last time, a huge army of them swarmed the capital of Alfin and absolutely wrecked the place. 20 years ago, she was just a little kid watching the maids cry and the palace guards vanish one by one, but she didn't realize the dark truth of what was happening until way later. The girl asked why he was bringing up the flood, and Tuishi-san Lee told her that a mysterious voice from God actually gave him the heads up. Marl was totally shocked to find out he's an oracle, but Tuishi told him he's got to learn everything about the kingdom anyway. He's heading straight to the palace to warn everyone that a massive flood is hitting in just 2 months. Even though he was a total hero, basically nobody in the palace actually believed him. Jack warned Tuishi that rumors could get him busted for starting a riot, but the hero just said it'd be way too hard to prove. If he tells everyone God warned him about the flood, they're definitely gonna think he's totally lost it. Tavishi asked the steward to set up a meeting with Santaku, and he said that if the Marquis backs them, they can finally get the temple's help. Marl says the capital's temple is packed with priests who can hear the divine eye, so if Tuishi talks to them, Marquis Zontak is bound to step in, and Jack's already promised to tell the Marquis every single detail. With the Great Flood just 2 months away, they started hunting monsters to stack up cash and grab the best gear to get strong before it hits. Back at the village, Marl and Tuishi just finished using their magic to blast away every single one of those insects. There were just way too many monsters, so both of them were totally wiped out by the time they finished. Tuishui was totally shocked by the massive haul he got from the mission and immediately wanted to stash it all in storage. Inside was some top-tier honey and a bunch of giant hornet larvae and eggs that were worth a massive pile of cash. The guys smashed a massive hornet's nest and shared all the loot with the villagers. They were super thankful to the travelers for coming through and helping them out. The villagers were so hyped that their home was finally safe, and since the travelers finished the job so fast, it was clear they should have called the guild way sooner. Marl came clean to the hero and admitted she only took the job for the money at first. She had no idea these materials would actually make so many people this happy. Being an adventurer was honestly the best thing ever, and Tuishi was totally on the same page as her. They scored a massive reward at the guild for taking down all 341 hornets. He scored 95 gold coins, 9 silver, and 2 copper pieces. The crew was blown away by the massive payout for just one job, and it looks like being an adventurer is finally making them some serious bank. They even grabbed honey, larvae, and pupae, which were actually worth a ton of money. Twishi just hit level 20, Marla reached level 11, and now she's finally earned the title of a regular adventurer. They had to get way stronger because they had no clue how many monsters would show up when the flood finally hit. She pulled Marl into a hug and told her she did an awesome job today. They both gave the guys at the mansion a big welcome, and Marl told Mabel they brought some top-tier ingredients. Then Twishi drags a giant doll out of the storage room and hands it to a super confused Mabel. The head maid was totally freaking out, so our hero quickly apologized for scaring the life out of her. She didn't even flinch at that move because she's literally eaten monster meat before. She said she'd be making dinner with Mabel, but the head maid immediately said she wasn't touching it, while Marl and Tui finally saved enough guild money to go buy some epic new weapons. Right then, Jack turned to Zantac and told him exactly what the hero Twishi was asking for. The guy who posted it promised he'd look into it and see what he could do. Marl asked Tiusha if they were going on the mission, but he wanted to hit the mansion's workshop to forge his own weapon before the flood, and she was totally down with that. She was totally shocked the hero actually knew blacksmithing and alchemy, so Toishi thanked her for the food and said it was finally time to master those skills. He stepped into the workshop with a huge grin, looking around and realizing he finally had every single thing he needed. Marl snuck a peek into the workshop to see exactly what was sitting inside the forge. Twichi told the girl she should totally start alchemy since the table was sitting right next to the forge anyway. Marl was totally down to practice her alchemy while the guy got to work in the forge. They're finally gonna see what they've done, and Tvishi figures if Marl is serious about this, he's gotta keep an eye on her since her alchemy could be a massive help. Tvish just leveled up and earned 19 skill points, and he's dumping 15 of them into blacksmithing to hit level 5 because he desperately needs some overpowered weapons. If he can actually sell this weapon, he and Marla are going to be unstoppable. Plus, making crazy gear is basically every guy's dream. Twishi started off by crafting a dagger, totally hyped to see what kind of reward he'd get at level 1. He sparked up a fire, and since Twishi was already a natural with tools, he started forging metal like a total pro. Our hero noticed the workshop's furnace was overflowing with magic, and the second he used his powers, the flames went totally wild. He heated the metal over the fire, and it actually turned out looking awesome. Then he grabbed a blacksmith's hammer and started pounding that metal into shape. Since he leveled up and got way stronger and faster, forging was a total breeze for him, especially since the hotter the metal gets, the easier it is to shape. As soon as the blade took shape, Twishi dunked the metal in water and kept at it until it was finally finished. Twishi sharpened the blade and put together a wood and leather handle so fast it left the kid totally stunned. In just 1 hour, he built a high-tier weapon from total scratch. She started grinding her skills to craft daggers, and even though level 2 weapons took forever, hitting level 3 unlocked magic, while level 4 let her boost that power to make top-tier gear, and every time he leveled up, he could craft that blade way faster, and his brain got packed with even more info. Twishi's brain was about to pop from all that data, but he kept forging like he was possessed, and suddenly he realized he'd already built dozens of different weapons. He was shocked Marl didn't complain about all the noise from the next room, but it turns out some crazy magic was soundproofing the walls. Marl burst into the forge all hyped because she finally got the magic potion, but her jaw hit the floor when she saw the massive pile of weapons already finished. Marla was hanging out with Furama, and even he was totally blown away by the massive amount of top-tier weapons Tuishi had made. The hero noticed they were both staring at that top-tier dagger, and since his blacksmithing was so high now, He could actually craft holy and magic swords. Even the way he used demon parts for Marl was super hyped about how well Toishi was doing, so he let her keep that perfect dagger for herself. That was easily the best thing he'd done all day, so the hero turned to Furama and asked if she needed a weapon to protect herself. She realized it wasn't just daggers sitting there, but a whole bunch of other gear too. She reminded the group that slaves and criminals aren't allowed to carry weapons because they might turn on their masters. But she bragged that she could take down anyone with just her bare hands. Marl pressed the dagger to her chest and said that even a masterpiece jewel wouldn't look half as cool as this blade. He was totally second-guessing if Marla even deserved a gift and if giving that weapon to Furama was actually a good move. Marl handed Twisha a healing potion she made herself, telling him it was a thank you gift for that awesome dagger he gave her. The guy thanks her, and Marvel says adventuring is a total blast, but she's actually getting super into alchemy and wants to see how a healing potion really works. Marl spent the whole day just to reach level 1, and by the time lunch rolled around, the girls told the hero they were having fish. After grinding at the forge all day, Toishi's skill and his hammer both hit level 5, so now he's finally crafting some OP weapons to get ready for the flood. A few days later, Toshi and Jack head over to Zontak's massive estate, and it's way bigger than their own house. The steward gave the office door inside the massive tent a soft knock, and once they were let in, Jack announced he'd finally brought the hero. Tuai explains why he's there, but Zontak already knows, and it turns out that's just a tiny piece of the real story. Every oracle and temple confirmed his warning about the flood was legit, so now every country is swapping info to prepare. It's a done deal. A massive flood is definitely about to hit. The flood hits different spots at different times, and after it totally wrecked the capital of Alphen, Twishi is now the only hero left in the whole country. The guy just grinned and said he's got just the thing for this. He threw open his treasure chest to show the Marquis a massive pile of swords he'd forged himself. This guy says he forged a bunch of weapons to make his team way stronger. He's got about 30 of them ready to go. He wants the Kylandela troops to start using them right now. Zrontak knew these sabers would be a total game changer for the cavalry and promised to deliver them. But he still had to figure out if he could make enough for the whole country or just the soldiers and adventurers. Tuishi agreed, but told them he only makes the blades, so they'd need another expert for the handles since forging the sharp parts is easy, but the grips are a total pain, and if the kingdom wants to mass-produce magic weapons, they're going to need some serious magic tools. The hero handed over his samples, and Zontak was shocked to see they were also crafted like a total pro. Zontak told the kid they'd be totally fine if he just kept helping the country survive the flood. But Toishi wasn't about to just give up and let it all go. He used iron, mithril, calcum, crystals, and black steel to craft these weapons, so he definitely needs a huge reward for all that effort. Our hero really hoped they could strike a deal with Zontak, since he crafts blades super fast and they needed to get him those materials right away. The Marquis and the hero finally shook hands, and Zontak said he was ready for the army and the travelers to beat this flood together. Later that night, right before bed, Marl walked up to Tuisha because he had a question. She asked him for magic lessons because Marl wanted to be totally ready for the Great Flood. Maple asks Marl what she's reading, and she says she's actually studying a whole book of magic spells. The book was super old, and when the older maid asked to see the pages, Marl totally refused to show her. She remembered the exact moment she went up to Tuishi and asked him to teach her magic. A massive flood is coming, so she's doing whatever it takes to master magic and be ready for it. Man, it would be so awesome if she could actually use magic. Tuisha was totally down with that and started showing her the ropes. He even offered to buy her a spellbook called Primitive Magic. Marl was hyped that Tuisha actually wanted to learn magic and alchemy, and since having her help was way better than fighting, He promised he'd totally show her the ropes. He told him to lock his fingers together, then pumped magic into one hand and then the other so the power would spread everywhere. They locked fingers, and his massive hands make her tiny ones look even smaller. The hero told Marl to focus her magic into her left hand, and she could feel the power surging through her. Toichi asked if she was hurting, but Marl just brushed it off and said she was totally fine. Marl felt this insane burst of magic power rushing through him. She realized Marl could give insane magic power to anyone, and she actually had some powers of her own too. She really wanted this to work, so she told Marla to soak up all that magic and pump it right into her left hand. He was pulling power right from her hand, but the more magic he used, the more it drained her, making everything way harder for him. The magic finally surged through both of them and clicked as Marla's power slowly started to sync up with Tuishizu's body. He felt her magic heating him up from the inside, and it was a totally weird feeling. He felt like he was drifting through space, totally surrounded by the love of Mars, and the girl was feeling that exact same energy. Tohidi was totally sure it was Marla's soul, since this ancient magic basically acts like a link between two people's hearts. Everything felt super creepy, like invisible ghosts were just drifting through the dead silence. He started panicking and calling out for tomorrow, but she just lay there with her eyes shut. Tuishi was in a huge rush and cranked up his magic, but he had to stop and heal Marl because she almost got herself wrecked by being so reckless. As soon as the magic started flowing, he felt this insane burst of power like his body was already used to it, and he could even sense Marl's soul mixed right in with Tuishi's energy. She probably felt his energy the moment he used magic for the first time. She just playfully teased Tuishi by calling him an incubus. The hero asked Marl how she was doing, and she said she felt a bit weird, but something finally clicked for her. Marl suggested they swap spots and jump right into a brand new round. Tuishi realized this weird tickling feeling was totally different from the one he felt before. Our hero suddenly realized this was for real as she started draining every bit of his magic right out of him. The princess told the guy to sit down and not move a single muscle. Toys told them to quit it because his magic power was on a whole different level. Meanwhile, the girl was tossing and turning on her bed, totally caught up in her own intense feelings. Using this old-school magic to swap and loop power between people is actually super dangerous. Tuishi felt a massive power surge and saw Marl had drained a whole 100 units of magic, which is a huge loss. But it should finally make the girl feel better. Their magic is super basic at level 1, but leveling up turns it into power they can soak up, though it's totally lethal if they use it for the wrong reasons. Toishi heads back to Marla and tells her he's just hyped they can actually use magic. The princess flips the page and tells them the story isn't over yet, so they can keep right on reading. The night was still young and some basic magic seemed like a fun way to pass the time, but Marla's non-stop hunger made Tuishi seriously regret everything. Toishi woke up and his head was pounding like crazy. While serving up breakfast, she gave Tuisia a bright good morning and hoped he got some solid rest. He didn't even bother answering and just muttered something under his breath. After that whole dagger mess, he felt super awkward when she rejected his gift and insisted she was just a slave. Talisha couldn't take the suspense anymore, so he just straight up asked Form what she really thought of him. She straight up told them he's the hero of the whole country, and she's just his slave. The guy figured he'd get the same reaction, so he switched things up and said it in a totally different way. Even if she's technically a slave, he doesn't see her that way at all. To him, she's a huge part of the house and a real member of his family. She told everyone he was from a place way further than she ever imagined, and after getting the mansion, he finally found a spot to just chill in peace. That's why he's making sure this place stays exactly the same for Furama. The company says she's up at the crack of dawn just to look after him, while Marl and Mabel catch up with Jack, making these days feel way more chill than the wild childhood she. He gave her all of this and finally made her feel like a real human being. The ex-killer didn't hold a grudge at all, and he told her straight up that he'd never hate someone for doing something like that. Furama says it'd be way easier if he just hated her since they're rivals, but even now, she just can't bring herself to hate Toishi. He's the one who pulled her out of her violent mercenary life, and honestly, she's like a whole new person now. If things stay like this, she's gonna lose hope and slowly go crazy until she has no future left. Obviously, she was totally losing it at first. Furama softly brushes To's cheek and tells him that everything is different now. Just as Marl walked into the dining room, Furamu jumped into action to whip up some breakfast for her. The second the maid walked out, Marl whipped around to face Toisha. She gave him a little nudge and asked if she could start helping him out with some work too. She was totally hooked on what Faramu said, so Toy wolfed down his breakfast and bolted straight to the workshop. Our hero's heart was pounding so hard he thought it was gonna jump right out of his chest. He tried to snap out of it and tell himself it was all a joke, swearing that Mara was the only one who ever mattered to him. Tui Shi meets up with Marquis Zantak again, and the guy reveals he actually triggered the flood just to get the hero to step up and hype everyone up. Tuishi realized the tent was basically begging him to speak, even though he was trying his best to stay quiet. Zontak apologized for even asking, but he knew his country was desperate and had absolutely nobody else to turn to. The hero said fine, but he warned them that if anything happened to Marlena's friends, he'd take down the entire kingdom himself. Tuishi kept his fingers crossed that he'd win over the kingdom, hoping that after the flood, he'd score a reward way bigger than his current home, maybe even a whole territory to call his own. Let's see them try to ignore him now that he's absolutely crushing it. Zontak handed Tuishi his schedule, but since the whole Marlo situation was a mess, the Marquis had a new deal to offer. After hearing Toi out, she was actually down to show up the next day. Marl ditched Miss Cronia to escape a forced marriage, and now that she's facing her rivals, they better listen up to Zontox's deal. The whole plan started because Princess Marl of Micronia, who totally looked up to the heroes, ditched her kingdom after getting a message from the gods. She met this legendary hero and backed him up through his entire adventure. The hero and princess falling in love is honestly super sweet, and everyone in both kingdoms is gonna see them as legendary heroes straight out of a fairy tale. Marl wasn't even worried about sneaking out of the country because her family couldn't really start any drama if she just claimed she was doing the right thing. They're playing a super dangerous game because if she picks the hero, the whole kingdom might riot after she dumps the neighboring prince right in front of everyone in Calendile. They can even use their speeches to tell everyone they're officially getting married. She was totally ready to run away, but Tui stepped up to help her, and she's so thankful he did. Marl mentions that Tuisia has been making everyone her concubine, but the hero promises she's the only girl for him, and he's just been super distracted by the flood lately. The heroes were about to drop their big speeches about the flood and were cranking out weapons like crazy, but their biggest challenge was still leveling up everyone at the estate. Tui and Marl finally made it back home, only to find the forum waiting for them right at the front door. The hero called the maid into the living room so they could have a serious talk. Everyone at the estate crowded around as Tuishi warned them about the massive flood, explaining that even if the walls hold, you never know if someone might try to sneak in through the chimney. So they've got to make some serious moves to handle this. The hero hands Farum the dagger and tells her she can't refuse it like last time when she felt like a slave, because now she needs it to protect everyone while he's away from the estate. That move totally threw him off and left him looking super confused. She told him she used to be a killer, but now she's just a slave who isn't even allowed to touch a weapon. Toichi raised his voice and shouted that he wasn't asking anymore. This was a direct order. She snatched the dagger from the hero and swore to protect the mansion with her life. but Toishi told her she better make sure she stays safe too. She thinks she's just a slave, but this knight from Calendile is actually ordering her to fight back. You gotta keep yourself safe and protect every single person living in this estate. The former slave girl got a look of pure fire in her eyes and swore she'd do exactly what he told her. Marl and Furama were just chilling in the pool when the princess dropped a total bombshell. The maid had officially become a concubine. Furama said if she ever got pregnant, she wouldn't force Toishitu and Dure to deal with it. And as Marl stared in total horror, Furama explained she was a... Marla replied, totally caught off guard that she was actually considering it. The company promised our hero they'd do whatever it takes to help him out. She said sorry and leaned over his bed, but he whispered that even though he was glad to see her, he can't hug anyone except Marl. He calmed the kid down for a second, telling him to be a man and stop worrying. He finally saw she was basically a demon whispering sweet words, and it was way too late to turn back now. Furama asked the master just how far they were actually gonna go together. Then they finally leaned in and shared a super long kiss. She felt super awkward, but she was actually low-key loving it. She looked at Toishi and told him she was super happy. They started going all out, screaming and groaning as things got seriously intense. Toys made herself look way older than Marl, and her chest was so massive it swayed with every single move she made. They were more hyped up than ever before. Totally drained, Fora laid Fella on his back and finally shut her eyes. I asked her how she was doing, and she told me she was feeling totally fine. She told the hero her whole job was to serve him, but Toishi was totally clueless about what she meant. Furama says she's the only one holding it down right now, and she's gonna keep going until he's totally satisfied. They stayed like that all night long, and even though they were closer than ever, Toishiche started getting a really bad feeling deep down. The next morning, Marla knocks on the door and tells them they've probably had enough fun already. Marl stepped into the room and asked her straight up why she broke her promise. The princess shot back that she wasn't even breaking any rules. She's just dying to be part of their squad. Tvisha was totally blindsided and never saw this twist coming. So our hero ends up sandwiched between two sleeping girls, and even though he knows he's living every guy's dream, he can't help but feel super guilty about it. The girls snapped their eyes open and asked him all at once if he was ready to go. Jack spotted a guy totally passed out at the workbench, so he grabbed a blanket and tucked him in. About 20 days after they found out about the massive flood, Toishi felt like he was literally dying. So Marl tried to snap him back to reality with some energy meds. Marl's been using Toishi as a human guinea pig for his potions lately, and even though the poison doesn't faze him, the side effects are getting pretty wild. Marl asked how he was feeling, but the boy said he felt super weak and wanted to know what kind of crazy side effects this potion actually had. Marl told the hero not to sweat it, explaining that it was really just some kind of addiction. Then Toishi showed off even more crates, and they were totally stuffed with sharp blades. He finally finished crafting the blades for the umbrella, and Marla asked if he'd made a sick new weapon for himself too. The master showed Marla an epic sword made of divine silver and crystal that he spent forever trying to get right. The princess just found out about divine silver for the first time. The hero tells her it's actually called halcum. It's a special metal made by purifying mithril. She asked about her sword, but he told her he was busy powering it up, so she should just use that mithril dagger he gave her instead. He rebuilt the legendary dagger and forged a matching sword for her, and she was totally blown away by how amazing it looked. Marl gave Toishi a huge thank you for doing such a great job. She grabbed the saber and started swinging it around, and while the hero thought she looked amazing, the whole vibe was honestly pretty terrifying. He figured Marl would look totally awesome rocking both a dagger and a saber. He realized Furama was a total pro at sword fighting who could train Marl, and the girl was so hyped that she immediately invited her to the backyard to start practicing. Ever since Tuishi started prepping for the Great Flood, he's been non-stop making weapons and grinding for cash everywhere he goes. The guild dropped a bunch of new monster hunting quests, so he spent his skill points to hit magic level 5, learned some insane spells, and maxed out his strength and mana until his stats were totally cracked. Training with Marlo was a total bust, but since he'd already hit level 31, he was dying to see what the princess had actually learned during all this time. Marl was getting way stronger, and thanks to Furama's training, she hit level 3 mastery and finally learned how to fight with 2 swords at once. Everyone was finally ready, and right in the middle of that massive flood, it was time for our hero to make his big entrance. Marley suits up and Tuishi tells her she looks like a princess, but she reminds him she actually is one and says he looks like a total hero. He just laughed and said it's because he's a hero, so he and Marl suited up in their mithril armor and waited for the action to start. He shocks everyone with Marl's super open armor and asks Xantaka if that thing can even keep her safe. The Marquis says this isn't just regular cloth. It's actually a mesh of invisible mithril that protects way better than heavy metal plates, and with magic boosting its defense, he thinks it's even better than his own gear. He tells the hero the ceremony is starting and asks if he's got the text ready to go. Zontak read that a hero finally showed up after 50 years and they were throwing him a massive wedding. But the news also warned that a giant flood was headed straight for them. The Marquis thought the huge crowd would make him feel the pressure, but Tuishi was the one who was actually a nervous wreck. The streets were totally packed with people hyped to see the hero finally get married. Tuishi and Marl rolled through the cheering crowd in their carriage, but everyone was staring because the hero looked super weird next to such a pretty girl. The whole crowd was buzzing about the hero's powers, and everyone was convinced he was out there wrecking trolls. He actually wants to feel super awkward whenever people start talking about him. Marl was hyped to tell Tuishi that his hero name was about to go viral, but Tuishi felt like everything was falling apart even if he still had his pride. As the crowd finished their long march from the castle to the city walls, the news finally broke that a massive flood was on its way. The emperor stood before everyone in the capital of Alfin and told them he had some massive news to drop. The oracle says a massive flood is coming in 2 months, but nobody needs to freak out because they finally have a hero to keep them safe. This kingdom hasn't seen a hero in forever, but now Tuishi Masubo is finally stepping up. Even though he's a total rookie, this guy soloed 3 trolls to earn the title of Troll Scorch, and now the king is making everyone in Calendile come out to give him a massive welcome. He's letting everyone in the capital know they've started making crazy new weapons to turn their army into a total powerhouse. Also tagging along is the girl who's been backing up the hero through his whole adventure, and she's actually the first princess from the nearby kingdom of Molière Vran Misk. She ditched her home to join the Oracle. Now she's got Tuishi's back in everything he does. She's the real deal saint of the Oracle, once. The king wanted to make sure every single person in the kingdom remembered something important. The king wanted to flex his kingdom's massive wealth and power, so he ordered everyone to go out and fight the flood to save the people they love. The whole crowd stood together and swore they'd fight to keep Calendale safe. Zontak told the emperor he absolutely crushed that speech. Tuishi and Marl were totally losing it and could barely keep from cracking up. He thought being called a holy prophet was hilarious since it was so weird to be called holy by someone he just met, especially since he was already known as a hero. Either way, all they could do now was wait for the flood to hit. Marl looked at the guy and asked what they were even fighting for. He doesn't even live in this city or belong to this country, and they're totally going to stop the flood without him. He just said he's got his own reasons, like testing his power or scoring a huge reward from the king. He knows for a fact that if he runs away now, He'll spend the rest of his life haunted by the guilt of letting all those people die. Marlask's voice was shaking like crazy, knowing he was the one who might actually die. He wanted to say anything was possible, but he was worried that not a single monster in the flood would actually be stronger than him. Now he can finally keep her and everyone at the mansion safe when the fighting starts. A bunch of locals spot Toysha and Marl up on the wall, waving like crazy and shouting that the hero and the saint make the cutest couple ever. Marl thanked the crowd and mentioned that they're finally starting to get famous. Shi straight up told them he never even wanted to be their hero. Marl flashed a super charming smile, and the hero realized right then that he wanted to see her look like that forever. He promised her they'd totally make it through this massive flood, and he'd keep her safe no matter what. Out of nowhere, the sky turned pitch black, and a massive wind started howling. Tichy and Marl suddenly realized a massive flood was starting to break loose. Just a few days ago, the Knights of Alphine from the Kingdom of Calendile met up on the fourth wall to plan their next big move. The kingdom has 3 massive fortress cities, Crossroad, Glodus, and Berlune, and based on the old records, they can hold out for a week or maybe even a whole month. But they've got to focus on Gladys and Berlion first, because if that place falls, demons will swarm down from the mountains and the army will be too slow to stop them, so they need. Zontek was ready to let the hero take over the capital and run the show for a while. Toichi was totally confused and asked why they picked him, especially since he's the big boss of the Knights. The Marquis wouldn't take no for an answer, demanding he use magic to blast back the monster swarms at the fourth wall when the flood hits. That sounded like a solid plan, so our guy decided to go for it. Marl nervously asked if he was actually sure about this, but Twishy told him he'd spent way too much time grinding his rank and upgrading his gear to back down now. That level 5 magic he grinded for during training is finally gonna pay off big time. She finally stood on top of the fourth wall, and the big moment everyone was hyped for had finally arrived. A massive explosion suddenly went off and it was crazy loud. Through the fire and smoke, you could see the shapes of all sorts of monsters lurking around. Ishisha just jumped up 2 levels after dropping that magical giant explosion. This move blasts pure magic projectiles from way across the battlefield. The blast is so insane it leaves a massive 100-meter crater right where Marl was sure that much power would stop the flood instantly, and he knew the hero wouldn't settle for anything less. The news says today's monsters were just the warm-up act, and they were actually working together to strike perfectly between every explosion. Looks like this massive great flood is only just getting started. A massive black hole just ripped open the sky, and a split second later, a giant monster paw reached right out. Something massive and scary was crawling out of that hole, and it looked like a total disaster was about to hit. Marl nervously asks if Vishy can actually beat him, so the hero decides he's not letting this giant run away and triggers his massive explosion magic. A chunk of the monster's paw flies high into the air as blood splatters all over the city walls. The wizard didn't want to leave a single trace of that demon, so he fired another massive explosion right into the giant hole. The knights were totally shocked by how massive that hand was, and it looked like the hero used his magic to rip a huge chunk of it right off the monster. They had no clue how they'd handle a full-size giant showing up, but at least Toishi realized he just leveled up 3 times from that fight. Our hero had no clue what that beast even was, but he shook it off because he still had a whole pack of monsters to take down. This massive flood is only just getting started. Mabel hid behind the door and asked her uncle about the black sphere, but Jack told her he'd never seen anything like it in his entire life. As the month went by, he realized that since that hand vanished, way fewer monsters were showing up. Mabel was terrified they weren't actually safe in the mansion, but Furumu warned her the monsters were going totally wild and they had to fight back and wait it out. They've got to put all their faith in their masters. Once that giant was taken out, The enemy stopped their push, and everything went dead silent by noon, even though that was the same beast leading the charge on the capital. She was 29 and just wanted to live her best life in this new world, so they rushed to the royal capital to save another city. A few days later, they hit the massive fortress city of Berlin, west of the capital, and our hero even mastered horseback riding along the way. Marl was right there with him like always, but now they were staring down a massive dragon. The dragon started blasting fire, and seeing Marl shaking with fear, Toshi told her to stay put while he handled the monster himself. She didn't want Tuishi going in solo, but he promised her it'd be an easy win once he unleashed his wind magic. He started picking up the pace. Before he could take down the dragon, he had to wipe out those flying monsters first, so he triggered his line of light. That insane spell absolutely wrecked those weak little monsters. The dragon blasts a massive wave of fire right at the hero, and Tavishti actually says he's starting to enjoy it. They were basically right in the monster's face now. I blasted my magic straight into the monster's skull, and the dragon's head went flying off its body. Our hero was feeling pretty good after finally taking down that massive beast. Marl wasn't buying Tuisha's worried act for a second since they needed that dragon loot, but she reminded him that if the beast gets turned into a puddle, there won't be anything left to craft. He just wanted to keep Marl safe, and even though he could have crushed that dragon in seconds, he actually listened when the princess told him to stop doing everything himself. She whipped out a potion and forced Tuisi to chug it down as a brutal punishment. She tells the hero he only got lucky because the city is a total wreck, reminding him that saving lives matters way more than just beating the monster, and then they head straight to Dnipro gloves. Ishi let the wind blast everything away and finally cranked up his power tension. He thought a painless death was the way to go, and he totally wiped out every single demon in the city. He hit level 61, but since the grind was slowing down, he dumped his extra points into maxing out his magic and unlocked a bunch of awesome new spells. Tuishi was now zooming across huge distances in an instant, totally shocking Marla, and those transition gates made every trip way faster than before. They finally made it back to the royal capital Alfin, and Marl stood up to tell everyone they could finally chill out for a bit, thanks to those transition gates. Tomorrow told them to head back to the estate the same way, because she was dying to finally jump in the bath. The hero looked the princess in the eye and told her he was heading straight for the crossroads. The Knights of the Crossroads just reported that a massive swarm of demons grew wings in a single day, and since their numbers are exploding, we've got to move now. They just don't have the power to stop every demon. More people are getting hurt by the second, and everyone is completely wiped out. Marl brought up the innkeeper and the guild members they looked after, then announced she was heading out with Toishi too. The hero warned her to stay away from that death trap because demons are everywhere. People are getting wrecked, and she really needs to worry about those creepy hands reaching out from the abyss. The lesson is simple. You can't stop a hero because no matter what you throw at him, he's just gonna keep moving forward. She just told him to run for it and watch his back if things got really dangerous. The second Tuishi stepped into Crossroads, he could tell things were about to get real. He spotted a bunch of different flying monsters and jumped straight into the fight. Volt's just waiting for the royal capital to send in backup at any second. But get this, their shadow was nowhere to be found. Right then, Ethan kept his eyes glued to the warrior who was absolutely shredding through those monsters. Ethan greeted Tuishi with a massive grin, hyped that it's been way too long since they last saw each other. The hero realized this was the same traveler who helped them smash those trolls. Ethan told Tuishi he looked awesome, and then Captain Waltz walked up to give the young hero some major props. He asked to just call Tuishi a warrior, and once the hero agreed and asked what was up, the captain explained that the massive flood was dragging out demons they almost never see. He couldn't believe how many of them were showing up, but Tuishi gave them props for hanging tough and told them to let him handle the rest. He flipped the switch and admitted he was stuck at another massive crossroads. After seeing that insane magic, Iton realized Tuishi was barely even human anymore. Look, if they don't make it through that spill first, the real story isn't even gonna start. The hero saw another black sphere pop up right there, and everyone just froze, waiting to see what would happen next. Toishai triggered his scanning skill and cranked his magic up to double the amount. His danger sense was screaming at him to get out, so he yelled for his friends to run. But Eden just bragged about having the strength of 1,000 people and asked why they'd ever flee. Tuisha got totally distracted by the ball, and in a split second it slammed right into his chest. The last thing he heard was Eaton and Waltz screaming his name. Tuishi barely managed to push himself up onto one knee using his sword, realizing that the black sphere had actually shown up. The captain rushed over to the kid and asked if he was doing all right. The hero admitted things were looking really bad, and he wasn't even sure he could actually fight if the enemy showed up in the capital while he was in this state. But before that can even happen, he's gonna smash that black sphere. Tuishi was the one who set off the biggest explosion of them all. He saw the black list flying straight for his face, but that was exactly what he wanted since now every single attack was coming right at him. That meant this thing was actually still alive. He used his skill to spy on the monster's private message, hearing headquarters order it to wipe out anyone messing with the balance. That's when Toishi spotted that massive beast with those crazy big paws. Turns out these guys weren't just your average adventurers. Even with the whole crowd jumping him, he kept his eyes locked right on the hero. Right in the middle of the fight, a message popped up for Captain Waltz demanding that these adventurers get kicked down below rank A. She was totally lost when they started talking about the balance being messed up. It finally clicked for him that the monster was actually hunting him down. You gotta wonder how much magic He saw his massive explosion only left a few marks on the monster, proving his strongest move barely did a thing. He was kicking himself for not noticing that the monster was actually slowing him down. The lion lunges forward and goes straight for the attack. He had more than enough time to pull this off. The monster's massive attack slammed right into him, and suddenly, the hero felt something totally off. A black arrow slams right into him. The monster's creepy face is staring him down, and she starts screaming her head off. He had no clue what was happening, but it felt like 100 arrows just ripped through him while he hung there in midair. He stared into the monster's fiery eyes and realized he wasn't making it out alive. He didn't really care, and figured it was better to just bolt instead of fighting, since he wasn't even from this world anyway. Tuishi lay in a pool of his own blood, thinking this might finally be game over. He spotted Marl's ghost floating right over his body and had no clue why she was showing up now. Tuishi sensed Marl's magic inside him and asked if he was crying, and since he didn't deny it, he swore to protect Marl and everyone at the estate to make up for the promise. Marl walks right up and tells him straight to his face that there's no way he's losing this fight. Tuishi totally panicked, snatched the sword's hilt and told Marl to wait right there for him. The royal guards peppered the monster with arrows, and Tuishi stepped right up to face the beast. This was a massive crusade, so they finally jumped into the fight alongside the Alphanita Order, and Toishi thanked Commander Waltz for the epic cover fire. He gripped his sword and used every last bit of his strength to charge straight at the lion. He finally figured out that his weird gut feeling was coming straight from the monster's attack. He's moving in total silence, and even when he drags his paws across the ground, no dust kicks up, which gives him a really weird feeling. He was totally sure he could handle any mess that broke out, so he went ahead and triggered his restoration magic. The monster might be silent, but it can't hide its tracks. So he uses his tracking skill to hunt the black lion down and strike before it can even react. He fires off his move and lands a solid hit on the monster, but he realizes right then that he's gotta keep doing this over and over. This monster seriously thought it could still make a meal out of the guy standing right in front of it. Toishi Delta uses his magic to land a super painful hit on the enemy. That monster let out a totally savage and wild roar. The hero's blade just kept tearing into that massive beast over and over. Finally, he lands a perfect heavy strike that slices the lion's head clean off its body. The hero just plopped down next to that nasty head and asked him who he really was. Is he actually leaking info to that creepy hand that showed up in the capital? He caught them mentioning headquarters, realizing this is the main squad that bosses around both the Black Lion and the Hand. What's this base even for, and who's trying to wreck the peace? He pressed his sword right against the lion's head and ordered it to start talking. Just like that, the whole broadcast went dead. He was just hoping she'd get totally lost in her own head. He figured the higher-ups were hunting down the villains trying to cause total chaos, attack every nation, and wipe out the population just to wreck the world's balance. He's got to figure out who these guys are and what they're really after before he can even start the fight. Because they definitely aren't just mindless monsters or basic soldiers. Whatever's happening, it's definitely part of something way bigger. Just then, the king's soldiers rushed up to him, calling him a total madman for being so reckless and asking if he was actually okay. He owned up to what he did, but he didn't even care because he could still protect Marla and everyone else. And that was all he needed.